All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Double One Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host Ryan, and I'm joined by my lovely cohort of co-hosts Wyatt,
There it is.
Brett,
Hello.
and Ben.
Howdy.
That made me very happy, Ryan.
All right, yeah, that was a smooth intro. I got everything out without forgetting anything, which is nice. So docket for today's show pretty clearly is going to be Game Awards and Cyberpunk. Those are our two big things that have happened. Primarily Game Awards announcements. We already kind of gave our rundown of the awards themselves last time. We'll talk a little bit, pretty briefly, on some opinions, but aside from that, it'll mostly be focused on the Game Awards actual announcements. So without further ado, we're going to get started. And because we're going to talk about the Game Awards first, that means we have an award to give out of our own. All right? And this award has a lot of input from you, the fellow co-hosts of the show. So this award is the most disappointing announcement from the Game Awards.
I think we're going to be all going to be.
So the Double One Radio Gamescast most disappointing announcement award. Or most like out of place, whichever you prefer to take.
Those are two very different things.
I'd say most
bit.
disappointing,
Because
or like disappointing in the way that like you don't understand why it was in the show, right?
Or in the
okay,
category.
I was going to
In
say
the
the most
ca-
out
yeah,
of
yeah.
place was actually the most exciting announcement of the show.
Yeah. I mean most disappointing announcement specifically.
And we're talking about like a game announcement, not
any announcement
what
from the
game
show.
won a category. What game won a category?
Yes, we're not winners of the categories.
Okay.
Specifically, like news and announcements that happened at the Game Awards. All right,
Gotcha.
Ben, you get first crack. What was
Oh
your?
God, come on! I don't know. I didn't think about anything other than Arc 2. I mean, that entire,
That was a descent into madness. That was.
it was
that
truly
so
a
funny.
fever dream. Like Vin Diesel was there, and I didn't know.
We'll
why,
talk about
and
Arc
then-
2, but we
We
gotta
will.
give the award.
Yep.
I don't know. Skip.
All right, Brett.
I gotta remember what else was in the show because like
Yeah, I'm trying to re-jog my memory a little here.
You ready, Brett?
I have a negative announcement, which is Elden Ring won a thing and then also just wasn't there. I was waiting for it the whole time.
I will accept Elden Ring not being there as the most disappointing announcement.
I don't
Because
know.
I as well am on that train of that was very disappointing considering there were a bunch of teasers pointing to it being there.
Yeah. I don't like
It might
every-
be. It might be the kind of situation where Half-Life Alyx was supposed to be at last year's show, and
I
they,
doubt
like,
it.
Maybe.
What I have a feeling it's more just a lot of Japanese devs do the thing where they kind of tease announcements that don't exist. Like Kojima's pretty famous for it. So is dude from Capcom, Itsuno. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was just them doing some like ribbing that led people to believe.
Phil Spencer lied to us, man. He lied.
No, I'm gonna the whole Fortnite thing was mine. That's what I'm saying.
There was a
Who
lot
cares
of
about
Fortnite.
Master Chief.
There was a lot
See,
of Fortnite.
I'm kind of split because I kind of want to say the Fortnite thing just because that made me sad. But what I almost want to put there instead is the Mass Effect announcement, just because they had absolutely nothing. Like they said, "Yo, there's a Mass Effect game
I'm gonna
coming.
bundle
We're not
that
even gonna
together
give it we're not even going to give it a name.
And just
We're
say
just
the
gonna say that
BioWare
it's coming.
announcements.
We already said that there's a Mass Effect game coming and that there's a remastered collection coming, but we're just going to give you this cute little graphic, just
Yeah.
because why not?
I know my personal vote is just the BioWare announcements. Both Dragon Age and Mass Effect were.
Did they have a Dragon Age thing?
Yeah, they did the Dragon Age thing.
I
It was
forgot.
another teaser. It wasn't an actual look at anything in the game. It was just another teaser. They showed
And look,
Elf
these
Boy
teas-
from the last
these
game.
These teases are okay if we literally had no idea that they were in development before showing.
Yeah,
them
this would be an
the first
okay
time we've heard about
reveal.
them.
But we've heard about Dragon Age for the last like 3 or 4 years at this point.
Yeah. Well, and they even showed us some stuff at some show, kind of when E3 was.
They've
supposed to be
never
happening.
showed us
They gave
any
us-
gameplay They've only ever showed us.
They showed us this like super early gray box thing, which kind of
That's not. No, I don't count that. I mean like gameplay of a vertical slice.
A finished thing. No, then
we haven't seen what the final product will look like. We saw like some gameplay testing, but that's really a different thing. I mean, most of us here having some foot in game development understand that like games change drastically over the course of development. So nothing we've seen until we see like a vertical slice is at all representative of the final game.
Yeah. So look, while the Fortnite thing kind of like insulted me because they had to drag Master Chief into their mess, I think I'm gonna have to go with Mass Effect just because it's one of my favorite series, and it was just a complete nothing of an announcement. Like, why even take up the space? Why even bother?
All right, Ben, we're going back to you. Do you agree? Disagree?
What? I said the Fortnite stuff. I mean, yeah, it's all disappointing in the BioWare stuff, but I don't know. I'm not that attached to those.
Okay.
Those
see, I am. That's the difference.
Brett?
So I can wait.
Brett, your final call. What was the most disappointing? Elden Ring?
Elden Ring. Yeah, that's like the one thing I was pining for.
All right. I'm going to kind of agree with Brett and say the most disappointing thing, executive decision, is the games that weren't there. Just in general, because we didn't get a lot of reveals I think people were expecting.
So does Mass Effect count in that list then of the things that weren't there?
Yeah.
It really wasn't.
Both really Mass Effect and Dragon Age I'm counting in that. So really, it's the BioWare award. It's BioWare and FromSoft.
Well done, BioWare. We're all proud of you.
Thanks for disappointing everybody.
Yeah. So we've got some announcements from the Game Awards to talk about briefly. Yes. And by briefly, I mean for as long as we want to. We're really not. This is our show. We can do whatever we want.
This is the 001 radio definition of brief.
Basically, what's the format for the rest of the show is gonna be we're gonna talk about the Game Awards as long as we want to talk about the Game Awards, and then any time that's left is gonna be Cyberpunk, because we all are pretty invested in the Cyberpunk stuff right now. So yeah, we will be talking about Cyberpunk, but first we want to cover the Game Awards announcements and major news. Before we get to news, any award gripes that are like pressing enough that you need to get it out on the podcast?
I mean, we can all think of two off the top of our head.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. Do we want to get into them now, or do we want to save?
So I think
I can think of 7.
The way to put it is The Last of Us. I don't think The Last of Us didn't deserve like specific awards. Aside from game direction, to me is the one that stands out as really not being deserved. But I think it sweeping as much as it did is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
Because
with some of its categories, it's hard to argue though.
Yeah, but some of it, it's not hard to argue. Like
no, I agree.
I absolutely agree that Last of Us winning like audio direction, 100%,
and accessibility. Also.
Accessibility, 100%. There's no question there. But
it's not like the game won an award, but Laura Bailey won best.
Oh, absolutely,
110% deserved.
Dude, for all the crap she had to deal with, like. Yeah, power to her.
And just her performance in general was fantastic. Like, I don't care what you have to say about the game or that character. She did an absolutely incredible job. So.
Yeah. Regardless what gripes people may have with the story itself, like the character performances, I don't think anyone's going to say those characters were acted poorly.
They're just denying.
Yeah.
They're denying reality if they really feel that way.
It's a separate thing from write-in.
It's totally. You can believe Ewan McGregor is a good actor without liking Obi-Wan from the prequels.
Right. Oh, I love the man. I hate that
exactly. That's why I brought him up.
I love the man.
That's why I brought it up. It's that kind of situation. All right. Yeah. So I think that's the big thing that stood out. Hades not coming away with Game of the Year. Always going to be disappointing. I understand why, and I get it. But man, I wish. I would have loved for an indie to take Game of the Year for once.
Even as someone who considers Last of Us to be one of my favorite games, it is not my favorite game of the year.
Like, yeah, I think Last of Us for me is absolutely. It's in the top 5 of my like games this year, but that's not that. There isn't that much competition.
Yeah, there really isn't.
On its level.
Been any like that many huge games come out this year.
Nothing that's like so good that it would push anything out of that list. I think.
Right. Exactly.
But even in like a regular year, I still think it would fare.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because I still think it's a good game, a very good game.
I mean,
it's like I see things going differently if it went up against God of War.
Oh, yeah.
I would see like that would be a tough one to swing, But
Yeah.
yeah, with the games that came out this year, as much as I love like Tsushima, Hades, and everything else that came out, and that was on that list, Final Fantasy VII Remake.
I think we're all
Yeah.
in agreement. Hades should have, like, if we're really talking about what deserves Game of the Year, it's Hades, just because it's like so well rounded in everything that it does.
Yeah, but
There's very few like flaws I can think of off the top of my head.
I do think an important bit of context here is for people to know how the Game Awards handles game like winner selection. It's very lightly influenced by audience, but almost not at all. Like, audience votes are mostly for the audience votes, so you have an outlet to vote for and see what if it was a popular vote, what would win. But the way the Game Awards actually does its votes is through a panel of like, I think it's like it's a ton of outlets from all over the world. It's not just American, it's not just any European, it's outlets from everywhere that send in their vote as an outlet. It's not any individuals, it's only outlets, to kind of prevent any sort of individual bias from factoring in, although that of course will still happen, but that's just the nature of any kind of award. It's impossible to prevent that.
And that's why to a certain degree it's important to not take the Game Awards too seriously. Not that I think the selection process they have is probably...
It's like treating it like the Oscars or like a film award show.
You go in with a group of friends or a group of people, and you're just there to have a good time and laugh at all the funny, cringy crap and just hope for the best. You're
there to watch Mario be bludgeoned on screen.
Exactly.
It is a at the end of the day, it's a spectacle, right? Like, it's very when people are like, oh, the Game Awards were terrible. It's like, okay, you may not have agreed with the selections, but did you still have fun watching it with your friends or even, by yourself? It really, it's less important than just, having a good time and sitting back a little bit.
Yeah.
It is also, and this kind of goes for like all award shows. Like I'm pretty sure we might all be in like the category of like just because like Game 1 award doesn't mean like end all be all like best game on the planet, but like at the same time, the things that are there have to be good enough in some way to win the awards. And like at least for me, just like I don't know if a game with as much like controversy during development and from certain members of the staff deserve to like win some certain things like direction or just straight up game
direction
of the year.
is what stands out to me as being like, if your game had a disastrous development, and a lot of the times that needs to be taken into consideration.
No, and what Ryan and I both agreed on when it won is that it's like 90 to almost all of % of the game.
Oh, like 100% of my issues are from the direction.
It's a direction thing, like if it had a different direction, it would be a vastly better game, and I would be way more okay with it winning Game of the Year.
And also,
at least way more understanding.
I do got to give my shout out to 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim for best narrative because it got snubbed. I never expected it to win. I don't think anyone did because of it's way more low profile than a lot of these other games.
Unfortunately.
And Last of Us was probably my second vote because it did have a really good... It dealt with a lot of issues, and I'm not going to... There's 2 whole podcasts where we talked about it, but I think at least for challenging those issues, even if it may not have been 100% successful all the time, still deserves that recognition.
And it is very like...
But man, I wish 13 Sentinels took it.
No, and I don't think it always succeeded, but again, we talked about this in our other 2 episodes. I think it's very ambitious in the way it structures its story. I don't think it always like pulls it off, but I can really respect
especially out of what came out this year, because like as much as we love Ghost of Tsushima, the way it tells its story is pretty familiar. Like it's not
even the main story that is the most interesting part. It's the side missions with all of the characters that is what really makes the game.
And look,
part of the narrative though.
Yeah, but I think
we talked about this on the other Game Clubs episode. For
Tsushima. Yeah, there you go.
So we're not going to go into detail about these because we talked about a lot of these games, but yeah, it's there's a lot of competition up there, and a lot of it deserved to win, but only one winner can exist per category. So of course it's going to be a little bit iffy. I think the biggest like debate right now is up around the game direction award, of whether or not that should stuff like the studio environment should be taken into account, because like Hades had a great studio environment, is an all-around great game with great direction. So I think that's why a lot of people feel like it got snubbed. But yeah, it's an award show. Just have fun watching it. All right, any last like major awards bits before we move on to the actual announcements? And
do we want to talk about how awkward it is to have sim and strategy in the same category?
Yeah, that is a good point. So
Yeah.
also, okay, I am gonna say here, this is the official point where we're gonna be talking spoilers for the Game Awards. So if you wanted to watch the Game Awards and see like reveals and whatnot before we talk about them, do that now, because we're gonna talk about all that
on the show.
Well, I mean, we're spoiling the like 3-hour award show. So if you don't want to know who the new Smash character is without watching that trailer yourself, go do that now and then come back. But we're gonna start spoiling that stuff soon. So
starting now.
Yeah, starting now, we can talk about all that stuff. So yeah, continue with what you were saying.
Yeah. So sim strategy. What was on there? We had let's put the obvious.
Wasteland 3,
Yep.
Crusader Kings 3.
Right.
We had a few other like strategy games.
Microsoft Flight Sim, obviously.
Just save it for last.
Yeah.
Too
Yeah.
late. We
Well,
couldn't
I'm not bringing up the nominees list for this.
It's not important enough.
It's not
Look,
even.
look, the thing I wanted to point out was that you have all of these strategy games, and then just nestled awkwardly in the middle, you've got Microsoft Flight Simulator, which in fact was the winner of that category.
Yeah, I didn't think any of the other ones had a chance next to it because it's the only only sim of the entire category. So anyone who likes Sims is going to be probably going
which
for
is
that.
strange to me
Simulator.
because Flight Simulator it's more of a meme than it is really something that was praised. It was like, wow, this is really cool to fly
it is
around
praised.
This thing and
So
see all of these things.
It is
but
praised.
I think it's praised in
I
sim
haven't heard a
circles,
whole
not.
lot, but that's
because
just me.
That's because people that play normal games don't play Sims. It's a completely different audience.
That's fair.
Like
That's
a lot of
fair.
people that play Sims don't play video games; they play Sims.
Right.
So I think the people that love that game justifiably love that game because it's a fantastic simulator. But it's weird to show up in a category with very different games.
With Crusader
a lot
Kings
of
3.
heavy hitters. Like Crusader Kings is
Every other game in that category also deserve to win. Like
Wasteland 3. I have it installed on my computer. I've been meaning to play it. I've heard nothing but good things about it. You know? Like just
I legitimately
bizarre.
Crusader Kings or Wasteland, I think were the definitely my top two for that, but I'm not upset that Flight Simulator won because it is a fantastic simulator, but it's just the category makes no sense.
It's funny.
I think it existed for them to give Flight Simulator an award because they needed to fit a sim into somewhere, and there were no other sims that came out this year.
And pairing these two genres together, pairing like sports and racing together makes slightly more sense, but I still don't think they go together at all. It's just another example of like they're combining categories that really shouldn't be combined. And I kind of understand that like maybe they didn't have enough entries for each category, so they started combining things. I can understand that to a certain extent, but would people really be complaining if you didn't have a simulation category for the Game Awards? If you're only going to be putting Microsoft Flight Sim there, are people really going to be complaining? I'm sure there are people that will, don't get me wrong, but do you really is anything really lost at the end of the day without a sim category?
Yeah.
Come on, Jeff.
Combined or otherwise.
I mean, with the same thing can be said about the sports racing category, because with sports racing, it was 3 really good racing games. Well, 2 really good racing games, and then Tony Hawk's, which is like 50% in the racing and sports categories. And then there's NBA 2K and like WWE, both of which are FIFA, and both of which were like universally panned this year, but are like the only sports games that were high profile enough.
Because like, what else is there?
So I'm just like, why not just make it like the racing category, and you can swing Tony Hawk's as racing, sure. I feel like you could do it. But yeah.
No, again, like that combination makes more sense in my brain than sim and strategy.
Yeah, they're not super comparable.
Tony Hawk, like I think that's all they needed.
Okay.
Tony Hawk
winner
makes
of the Tony Hawk category is Tony
Shocker!
Hawk Skater.
Brace yourselves. You'll never know. You'll never guess.
Okay, so we've spent about 20 minutes talking about awards, which means we gotta move on. I'm gonna have to kick y'all into high gear for these announcements.
Oh boy.
And that said, there's not that many high profile announcements.
No.
There's a few that I think we'll talk a lot about.
Mind bender.
We're not really gonna talk about stuff that was in the pre-show. There was a lot of stuff in the pre-show that existed. We saw some Nier Replicant stuff, some Sea of Solitude stuff, a new Devolver game. Like
Which you would
it's
think would go
not super
in
high
the
profile.
show.
Not really. Like these things aren't high profile at all. So I wouldn't be.
Nier.
Well, we've heard about this Nier game before. This isn't a reveal.
And it
That's
wasn't
fair.
showing anything new.
Yeah, this was just
either.
some more gameplay of a game that's
Yeah.
already we've known about
That's
for a
fair.
while, and I believe it's also a mobile game. So
Not the one that they showed. The one that they showed was the remake of the first one.
no, they also showed Near Replicant, which is the mobile game.
What is this, Blade Runner?
Near version like 1.2 whatever is the remake
was-
thing. Near Replicant's a different thing. What they showed gameplay of was with the same characters from Near Automata,
Hmm.
but in like a mobile-ish game. From my understanding, we don't know a lot about it yet, so but we did see gameplay. We saw this cool thing called Century. Oh, you guys remember it?
That
The dragon
looked
game?
sick. That game looked sick.
Oh
Hey,
my-
that
oh
was a
my-
game that we thought.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
what-
free. That game is going to be free to play.
It looked pretty fun. Apparently, it's PvP as well, which was kind of like
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but it seems very fun. So
And Ryan, I do have to correct you because I didn't want to say it and be wrong, but you actually combined both of those Niers together. Or actually, you took the Nier Replicant version 1 point whatever the hell, which is the remaster of the original Nier, and you separated them into two different things.
oh, okay, I see what you mean. I'm reading off a list here, so it gets confusing.
I don't
that's
blame
what's
you. They're
happening.
named confusingly.
See, this is why I love Japanese names, but man, it's confusing to read these things when you need to know information.
Yeah.
So we saw the mobile near Automata thing, which I don't have the name for in this list, but it's something different. So it's not Near Replicant. Near Replicant is the Near remake.
Yes.
But back to Century. I was convinced. Both Ben and I were convinced that it was a remake or reboot of Lair. That faded PS3 launch game way back in the day, made by the guys who did the Rogue Squadron games. That was just kind of a mess. And look, if it's not that, which it's not, they're clearly inspired.
Well, it's
to
also
say the
it looked
least.
very Panzer Dragoon.
It did look like
Sure,
Panzer Dragoon.
sure. I'm less familiar with Panzer Dragoon than I am.
Panzer Dragoon is probably what inspired Lair, is my bet.
Makes sense.
If that's the way that it's going.
That makes sense.
But yeah, it looked very Panzer Dragoon, but
Looked
it had some
cool.
good graphics.
It was
looked
gorgeous. My goodness.
The dragons are cool designs. Like they look
Yeah.
very intimidating.
The animation on them too was really, really well done.
Yeah, very slick.
There was a lot of tiny details in there, which was nice. Not that I'm an expert on how dragons should move at all.
Yeah.
But
All right, moving on. They started off with a heavy hitting announcement. We got smashed right away.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think people were thinking they were gonna slip smash somewhere in the middle, like they did with the Joker reveal way back when.
out of nowhere.
But
Yeah,
nope,
yeah.
Mario got impaled immediately, and Sephiroth swooped down to join Smash
And it was
this
awesome.
month as well. So he's coming very soon.
Another anime sword boy. I can't wait.
Another anime swordsman.
Look, at least I'm hopeful that Sephiroth will play very differently. Seeing him from like playing Final Fantasy VII, he's very much not just anime sword boy, but I am a little worried
Yeah.
he might just become anime sword boy in
It
Smash.
seems like he has a lot of good stuff going on. Because the people I were watching with like went back afterward and like literally like frame by frame
Yeah.
tried
Oh
to
my
guess like
God,
what his
yeah.
moves were, and he has a lot more than just like his like 20-foot long katana or whatever the hell that thing.
Because
is.
Sephiroth does a lot of tricks.
It's an
He's got
anime
a
sword.
bag of
Yeah.
tricks.
He
for
has a lot of
use.
spells, and he seems like he uses some of them. We were disappointed a little bit, the guys that I was watching with, because they didn't actually use new music. It was just stuff from Advent Children, so it wasn't a really cool Smash remix of
Yeah,
One Winged Angel yet. Maybe later.
we
but-
might
Yeah,
get it.
there's-
So
there's
there
still
is
time.
there is a Sephiroth direct on the 17th, which is a couple of days after this podcast comes out. You can watch the Sephiroth direct to get some more news on Sephiroth. At least we're getting more Final Fantasy tracks in Smash because they got some good music.
They do.
And Cloud only got 2 songs compared to like Joker's 20. Because
Well, again, that's also
it's
that's
Square
the-
Enix.
well,
Square
that's
Enix's
the- well,
licensing is a nightmare.
There's that, but also it's the Persona soundtrack. Like they would be flayed alive if they didn't.
Have you,
know?
heard a lot of the Final Fantasy VII
No,
soundtrack,
I have.
soundtrack
I've
Wyatt?
just also
It
heard.
is.
I've just look,
And
look,
it's arguably
I
more
have-
appreciated too.
but I've also heard a lot of
the
the Persona
soundtrack.
Yeah,
Nothing's
Final Fantasy VII
greater than the
soundtrack.
Persona soundtrack.
Final
The
Fantasy
Final
VII
Fantasy
soundtrack is
VII
big.
Everybody
soundtrack?
hypes the
Are you
living
kidding?
crap out of
Look,
the
look,
Persona
look. My
5
point is, it's
soundtrack,
all
though.
great. It's all great.
It's all very good
That's
music,
all
yes.
That's all I'm saying.
I understand the point Wise trying to make. If they didn't, because it's first of all, what is it? It's the first
In its look in
Persona 5
Persona's
character in
fan
Smash,
base, in
right?
its circle, the music is like very, very highly.
75% of the game.
I don't know if I'd go that
No,
far,
not
but
really,
it's
'cause the
but it's a
game's really
lot.
good.
But it's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
what
Look,
Very-
all right.
really
As I think the only person here who has played the Final Fantasy VII remake, I have to say that it's also that way in Final Fantasy.
Oh, I
At
have
least
no
the newer
doubt.
ones. For
I
for
have- you know
different
what?
reasons, but I think that argument doesn't go anywhere.
You know what? I haven't
I'm
played
not really
Final
making
Fantasy
an
7,
argument,
so
I
I
guess. I don't
think
know.
Persona 5's better. Thanks.
Oh, see, I'm gonna step away from
Look,
that.
I will say,
won't
I
touch
think
that.
I think Joker
Deliberate
is a
sarcasm.
probably going to be a more interesting fighter than what Sephiroth is, because I don't see them going as insane with Sephiroth stuff. Although he might have some Joker things. We saw the One Wing come out for like part of the time, so he might have some Joker style meters going on of when he can use his like special modes, which would be very cool. But yeah, we'll see next week what he's like. I'm very excited. Although I will say, disappointed it's not Doomslayer,
Yeah.
but not by
Okay.
much. Like I'm happy with Sephiroth, but
to be honest, like, if you think about what kind of moveset Doomslayer would have, would
I
he
don't
really
think
be
he's
that
gonna get into
interesting?
Smash. I think people that
Yeah,
think
would
he's
he
gonna get into
really-
Smash are
would
crazy.
he really be in Smash? Like,
I mean, you
I don't
could.
know.
They would have to do
You
so much
could.
gymnastics.
He would have to use the sword, like, as his primary, which would be kind of weird. Because I don't think if he had just used guns for his primary, then he'd just be like kind of a.
Because
I'll
like
play Smash,
this is
but
coming from the
really
same people that were
fun.
like Snake can't have guns because they're too lethal, so he gets explosives.
Right, exactly.
So
Totally.
yeah,
I mean, they could rely on like
There are
you
very
know
few
things
guns.
like things like the chainsaw or the
Yeah.
crucible, that kind
but
of thing.
you are. Do you really see them allowing you to chainsaw Mario in half? I don't think so.
No, the Doomslayer just doesn't make sense in Smash. It's not gonna happen.
I could see it
doesn't
happening,
make
but it
sense.
would
Look,
probably
can I
not
dream?
be.
Okay, can a man dream?
Wyatt, I
can
put it
dream.
this way: I see it. I could see it happening, but I think you would be disappointed with the result. That's how I'll put
I
it.
mean,
Like I feel like
that's
they
fair.
could finagle it, but it would be disappointing to Doom fans
That's fair.
because they
My
wouldn't be
thing
able to
is-
respect the character.
My thing is, I don't care at all about Super Smash Brothers, so I'd much rather just
Yeah.
play the Doomslayer and Doom Eternal.
Exactly.
Also, we would be getting Doom music in Smash.
Now
which
that-
would just be great.
That
More Doom
would
music.
be
Tell me
a
that would not
reason
be awesome.
to be
More Doom
happy.
music in this world,
You
wherever.
probably
it
get
is,
some pretty
is
cool
better.
looking stages.
Although I don't know, I wonder if they'd even be able to because of the Mick Gordon licensing.
Oh yeah,
Oh
the
my-
shenanigans.
The licensing
whole-
might be a
we
nightmare.
might be able to get like the what's their expansion called, because they have a different composer.
Yeah,
the
the
Mr.
ancient,
Holschult, I believe is his name.
who's also very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Very
So-
good. Yeah.
But yeah, we
But
got to move on because we have a bunch of announcements to talk about, and we need to leave time for Cyberpunk.
We got Crimson
so
Desert to talk about.
yeah, Crimson Desert is like the last thing, but we'll talk about it because I think for a lot of us
I
that stole
forgot
the
about
show.
that, and I'm just getting back into the zone.
We saw a
Unbelievable.
cinematic reveal trailer for Perfect Dark, which is a new Perfect Dark
Which-
game.
It was great because we were constantly guessing what it was trying to be in Perfect Dark.
It's so off base.
It was
So off
awesome.
base.
It was awesome.
For a moment, I
those
thought
are
it was
the
like
best ones.
I thought it could be IO Interactive's like
That's what I was thinking.
James Bond game, but
Which is funny because it was made by Rare, who did the older
Yeah.
GoldenEye games, and they're very similar, at least on the N64. So.
yeah, I think we can
Somewhat.
kind of leave it as it's a new Perfect Dark game announced because there's nothing to talk about. We don't have any
It's we just
indication.
being excited.
We know it is likely first person. That's about it.
Microsoft finally starting to use some of their properties, so
Yeah.
hats off to
Thank
them.
God.
We got a new sequel to a famed franchise, Left 4 Dead, called Back 4 Blood. It's not actually a sequel to Left 4 Dead, but it's made by the same developers.
It might as well be.
It may as well be a sequel to
Spiritual
Left 4 Dead.
successor.
And it's
Yeah,
called
it is-
for Back 4 Blood. Like,
It is the BioShock to
yeah, System Shock.
System Shock. Yeah, it's like that.
It's very hard to not see that direct connection. It looked fun. We saw some gameplay. Sounds were bad, but there's certainly time for them to fix that up. So
I mean, sound design wasn't great in the Cold War beta, and they were able to.
yeah, like
make it
sound
a lot
design, I
better.
certainly believe they can get those guns punchy enough by the time it comes out to be fine. And I'm sure they
For
know how
sure.
to do it because Left 4 Dead is good at
Yeah.
that. So I totally see that just being like probably a COVID thing of they had to get something there and used what they had. Yeah, so Back 4 Blood looks good. That's our first zombie shooter of the night, first horror game of the night. Keep track of that because there's a bunch of them.
There's a theme.
We saw
Very
Hood
solid.
Outlaws and Legends. So Hood Outlaws and Legends, our second like horde-ish kind of game. This one we still don't really know what the gameplay is of like the structure of it. We know it's a first person, third person, like For Honor style thing, kind of, but it's also a heist game and it's like fantasy
And multiplayer.
and Robin Hood and PvPvE, so it's a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Seems interesting, although I remember when we were kind of looking at this last time it was announced, they had hinted that there might be some battle royale.
That may have been
parts.
us. That may have been us just kind of extrapolating that,
All,
I think.
all I can say is if it does have any of those elements in it, I've lost interest.
They didn't go
almost
for the
entirely.
battle royale thing this time. They
No,
pretty
no, they
clearly
didn't.
made it aware that it was a heist game. And this game's a ways off. It launches on May 10th, so we'll see. Probably a lot more gameplay before then. So, moving on. Scavengers open beta, or closed beta. Scavengers is a game. The only reason this game is notable here is because it was shown off like 2 years ago at the Game Awards and then went just radio dark for 2 years. And then here it is back at the Game Awards, and it looks maybe like a battle royale. Maybe it's another PvPvE thing.
This
Yeah.
is another ex-Bungie dev, right?
I think so.
I think.
Which went
It's
so well
another
last time.
PvPvE shooter multiplayer competition thing. So
Yeah, what are these guys doing? Just
there's a lot of them. It's really hard to. I don't know if these games are gonna find success because like already that's a pretty tight market, and they're also games that
Yeah.
that have a very high barrier to entry. So yeah, I'm curious to see if these games survive. Moving on, we got the biggest reveal of the night. Forza is getting a Cyberpunk car.
Oh
Yeah,
my
huge.
god.
So
Hey, it's
basically,
free.
This means that Forza is relevant again. And
It
we're
means
gonna see-
Forza is technically now in the Cyberpunk lore, not actually, but hey, it's free
I don't
now.
think
You can
Forza
get the
has
car for free
Forza
now.
lore.
You know, I kind of expected out of all of the different driving games to get a Cyberpunk car, I kind of expected that to be more of a oh my god, the driving sports game. Oh my god. Rocket
Yeah?
League. Thank you. Wow.
Sports
Oh,
and
Rocket
racing?
League. Yeah.
Tony Hawk
Rocket
Pro
League.
Skater
I kind
2?
of
Yes.
expected that to be more of a Rocket League thing. 'cause they
Seeing
have
how they've
so
treated
many
cars in
crossovers.
Cyberpunk, I'm not surprised it's Forza because Forza does make sure to have like the cockpit views and everything. So yeah, I'm not surprised it's Forza after playing some Cyberpunk. But yeah, it was a little out of place in the middle of the Game Awards.
It was
just to see that.
interesting. It was a good laugh.
All right,
don't know.
moving on. Our second sci-fi horror. We have Callisto Protocol, spiritual successor to Dead Space, made by some of the devs from that team.
Are you gonna say the interesting thing about this game, or do you not know it yet, Ryan?
Go ahead.
This game takes place in the
Oh
PUBG
yes,
universe.
yes.
I'm sorry, wait, what?
It's not a joke.
I forgot about
It's
this.
not
I
a
did
joke.
save this
What?
specifically to talk about on the show. Yep.
What?
This is canonically in the PUBG universe.
Why though?
And
Nobody
all
understands why.
excitement Gone.
Are they getting paid by the company? Like,
Presumably, I don't know. The theory that I saw is that they're going to try to set up some sort of gaming cinematic universe, essentially, which really I'm not
Ugh.
down for. Please don't.
No.
is
Not
it?
with
But is it the same
PUBG.
company? Like, what's going on?
No, it's not.
Why then?
It's
I
it's it's
don't
Dead Space
know.
Man's new team that I guess he left because he was with Treyarch or Infinity Ward or something for a while, and I guess he left and decided to do
A spiritual
cool
successor
thing.
to Dead Space.
It's
Right.
yeah, but now I hope
It's just such a
maybe-
weird decision.
maybe it won't matter too much, and it'll just still be cool, and it'll just be like a weird.
Well, because like the
okay,
reactions I
this-
saw were like, PUBG has lore.
it's yeah, exactly like who
Yeah.
who cares?
and it's also, this is
we'll make
clearly
fun
set
of-
in the
we'll-
far future, so
Like, we'll make fun of Fortnite's lore all we want. I think it has more. I assumed it had more than PUBG did.
PUBG, yeah.
yeah. So we'll let you guys sit with that and wrestle with
What
that
is it,
on your
man?
own time.
All right, look. I'm gonna derail us for a second. What is it with different battle royales having all of this rich lore for a battle royale and having it just not? Because Apex does as well, right? And then Warzone kind of continued Modern Warfare's story. It seems like Warzone is going to continue Black Ops' story too. It's very weird. Like why? Why put in the effort if it's not really going to materialize in any way?
I'm gonna leave that
Drop
question
off that
unanswered,
bus.
Wyatt, and move us on because we're a third of the way through this list and we got a lot to cover. So we got to keep up the pace. But
Oh.
that's a good question for people to think about. All right. We saw some
was-
Warhammer 40k Darktide. Darktide looks really fun. It's the Vermintide, but in space.
It's Fat Shark. They're probably going to do a good job.
It's 40k Vermintide. It looks fun. That's about it. It's another horde shooter of the night. We saw Annapurna Interactive's and Fulbright's world premiere of Open Roads, which was had a weird art style. It was like 3D environments, 2D characters.
Not sure how I
Neat.
feel about it. I'm gonna be
I liked
honest with
it.
you.
I liked it aside from the fact that the characters were super framey.
Yeah,
They
I
were
think
at a
that
really
was
low
my
frame rate.
problem.
But yeah, aside from that,
It's
it looked really
very-
good. We got an announcement that I think is super cool. Disco Elysium is getting a final cut with full voice acting for free.
That was.
It is a
that was
free
super
upgrade for
exciting.
anyone who owns the game in 2021, and that is super exciting to me because I'm like,
Yeah, it is.
that was like the big hang up with a lot of Disco Elysium is that there's so much dialogue, so much reading that like having, even though it's probably not going to include, I would imagine, some of the like your thoughts being narrated, but even just for all the dialogue will be a huge step up and really help people play that weren't interested in the game play it this time, that they can not have to read.
Which and to be clear, like not having voice, like that can be a legitimate reason for someone not to play because it is a lot of.
Yeah, the understanding is that Disco
Yeah.
Elysium is like a studio's first game. They don't have the money for that.
No.
Yeah.
as long
But
as
then
you
Disco
understand why it's
Elysium
not
swept
there.
the Game Awards last year.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
came
you can
away.
understand why it's not there, but but it's also valid where
It's
like,
going to
there's
help
a
it
lot of-
reach a much larger audience.
for sure.
Yeah, okay. We saw Dragon Age 4. Kind of,
Moving
maybe,
on.
not really.
Moving on.
We saw
You know that
Solus.
Solus is in it.
We don't
Yeah.
even know he's in it. We just know he's narrating the trailer. I would not
which
be
would
surprised if
imply
he
that
wasn't
he's
in the
it,
game.
But yeah.
I legitimately, I
Whatever.
just want to see the game because nothing we've seen is at all representative of the game. There was some weird
Yeah.
stuff where this looked a little more like magic fantasy than normal
Yeah,
Dragon
it was-
Age.
It was interesting, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm worried because of Anthem," which is totally fair. From my perspective, yes, Anthem was not good, but if this is in a similar vein as to something like Mass Effect Andromeda, where I really do feel like that game is kind of underrated, I'm excited in that sense because I get the feeling that they want to kind of move away from their more sort of turn-based combat, and they didn't have turn-based or not turn-based, but
Real time with pause.
real time with pause, yeah, and they had that in. I'm excited that they'll kind of move away.
Yeah,
from
and I think an
They-
important
they-
thing to mention there is that real time with pause combat can be done well, but Dragon Age like never really
And it's
did it
also-
great. So
and it's also a personal preference thing as well.
yeah, I think I have a much higher tolerance for weird combat than Wyatt does.
Yeah,
And being able to
that's
handle
fair.
real time with pause, because I think fans of CRPGs might be disappointed that it's losing real time with pause. Although,
and I
like,
get that.
I
Like
don't know.
classic fans will. Yeah, I get it. I think it's better off, but that is totally
I mean, even Dragon Age Origins,
Personal
which people constantly tout as like being the best combat in the series, is super clunky. So
I played that game and it was not for the combat.
yeah,
I like
it's
it, but
super
not
well
because of
written.
the combat.
Combat's serviceable, but yeah, it was super clunky and nowhere near the level of stuff like Pillars of Eternity. Moving on, because we literally know nothing else about it. New Endless game, Endless Dungeon, is coming to consoles and PC. It's a top-down
Looked good.
shooter. Looked neat. Had some cool character designs. That's about it. I think that's everything. That's all we can say about that. Crimson Desert. So this is, I think, the thing that
Oh My goodness.
This game kind of stole the show for at least for me.
And a surprise show stealer as well. I was not.
Really?
Was
Well,
for
because we
me, at
saw a
least.
lot of the first like minute and a half to 2 minutes of this trailer was just sweeping shots of landscapes.
with like no sound. It was
It was
odd.
very weird, and it didn't get me hyped for anything. I was like, okay, pretty landscapes. I know this is the BDO thing, but what are they gonna do? And then I was like, are they just not gonna show the game? And then they showed the game, and it looked really fun.
Well, they just kept showing more and more, and I was just. We were all freaking out because they just didn't stop with
It
the
went
amount
on
of like
for
features
so
and
long.
stuff.
It was longer
crazy.
than it needed to be for certain. This was like this was a full like 6 minutes of Black Desert sequel in the middle of a show. It
Yeah.
kind of did put a stop on things, and I think cutting this
mean,
down
it
to
was
like a
cool.
2-minute trailer would have been better.
I don't know. It was
But-
really
I mean, they
cool.
clearly had a lot to show off and were proud of it, and I can understand. I can
Yeah.
understand that.
And for
that's-
context for people, this is Crimson Desert is a game set in the same world as Black Desert Online that is maybe an MMO. It's going to have a single player campaign, but looking at different times, you'll get different answers out of the company as to whether or not this game will have an MMO component. It seems like the most recent answer is that the game is going to be single player focused with like multiplayer elements, but not MMO elements. And the big assumption as to why is that they don't want to lose business on Black Desert because Black Desert is doing super well, so they don't want to like release another MMO and then cut their own player base in half, essentially. But yeah, if this is really single player focused and not money grabby, I'm really hoping this game just has like a price tag associated and doesn't go crazy with microtransactions. Although I don't have a lot of hope of that for it being the Black Desert devs. It definitely looks really fun. Some cool combat.
Yeah.
Little overzealous on the particle effects, but that's easy to fix.
Yeah, super. Yeah, just super graphically impressive. That was something that stood out to me.
Yeah.
As well. It looked very like unaliased.
It's
looked
probably
kind of,
early footage.
early
betting.
footage. Sure.
All right, moving on. Swedish Chef is in Overcooked. Great. Moving on.
You can barely even tell it's him.
We got a cool looking indie game called Season that was announced for the PS5. We don't know a lot else about
Yeah.
it, but it looks very cool.
That one looks super pretty.
I'm already in. The art style instantly on
Yeah.
board. All right. Black Ops Warzone getting a season pass trailer or season 1 trailer.
Oh.
Great. Moving on. Now we're to our other like game of the show, Arc 2.
Vin
this
Diesel
is
Game
my
of the
game
show
of the
for
show.
completely
Dude, that was
different
my game of the
reasons.
show for sure.
For completely different reasons. We should
Yeah.
clarify.
Probably game that we least have an interest in playing, but most have an interest in following.
Yes.
I think is
Yeah.
In the category of games that just floored you like none other, like this is
Yeah.
it.
It took us a very
Because
long time to get
truly-
over this.
I don't know what was going on.
The rest
or
of the show was
why.
just in this void of like, what do we do now?
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, after that,
Yeah.
what
it felt
happens
like
after this?
It's that
Is
was
God
the
real?
bomb. The bomb dropped, and it was Arc 2.
Well, it's also
and
Vin
everything
Diesel
after
is
that-
often the bomb drop at the Game Awards. Last year it was the Fast and Furious game. This year it's
Yeah.
Arc 2.
It was Arc 2.
He was making some big plays in the video game industry. Let me tell you.
If the duality of Keanu Reeves and Vin Diesel become like a constant in the Game Awards
I
every single year,
know.
it's like Keanu Reeves is there to say good words, then Vin Diesel's there to bring hell upon the Game Awards. I am
He's gonna
so
say the
in.
most-
I would
I'm
be so
in.
ready.
Vin Diesel's just a part of every like just
Yeah.
If-
crazy
if-
out of left field garbage project. Keanu gets to work with all the A-listers. Like, it's a story, this redemption arc for Vin Diesel. And in 10 years he'll come
I
back.
don't know
and
if
he'll be in
redemption is
Cyberpunk
quite the right
2088.
word. Look, I don't know if redemption is quite the right word, but it's definitely an
Well,
arc.
no, listen. We're at the beginning of the redemption arc. It's just starting now. I'm talking 10 years down the line. We'll have the game.
We're in the
Awards,
dark second
and he'll
chapter of
finally
his
be
life.
a part of like I don't know.
This is the
whatever,
Empire
good-
Strikes Back of Vin
Yeah.
Diesel's character arc.
Right, exactly. This is the dark times for him, but maybe he'll bring it around. I don't know.
Yeah. So basically Arc 2 got revealed in a cinematic trailer. We didn't see any gameplay, so we don't know what it's like. We
Nope.
don't know when it's coming out. We know very little aside from that
We know
Vin
there's
Diesel.
a lot of Vin Diesel.
Vin
we don't
Diesel's
know-
involved for some reason.
We don't know why they are doing it. We don't know like anything at all.
But
about
hey,
why
we
anything happened.
also got another little surprise from the Arc team. Arc the animated series.
we got an anime now.
Which I
incredible.
honestly seemed kind of cool.
Yeah, it was
I'm
No.
decently well
Like-
animated
I mean, I'm
for
more
that
excited
reveal
about
trailer.
that than I am about Arc 2.
Yeah. Good way to put it.
I'm not that
The
excited
animation
either.
style reminded me very much of like Korra.
But a little
It
more
gave me a
little
lot
more
of Korra
crunchy, a
vibes.
little more low
A little
budget.
It was
crunchier.
very rough compared to Korra.
But there was some
you
good
get what I'm-
faces.
You get what I'm saying, though.
It's a not anime.
Yeah.
It's a not anime.
It looks like I'll probably watch an episode of that and be entertained and then never watch it again.
Yeah, and then never.
What if
For
it
the
just comes out
novelty.
of nowhere and it's just incredible?
And apparently
cast.
it is
Part
an
of a stacked
origin
cast,
story on the
too.
game. Yeah, it is. It had some like David Tennant was in there.
It's so many questions. So many questions.
Literally, I don't get it. Where did they get these resources? I mean, I guess Ark Survival Evolved is doing pretty well, right? But like,
Arc
So
is
is
doing
Atlas.
crazy well. So
Oh.
yeah.
Oh,
We don't
Oh,
talk
I
about
I wonder
Atlas.
why they're making a second one right now. I don't get it.
Hey, gotta capitalize while you can. Yeah. So I think we can make the promise here that when Arc the animated series comes out, we will talk about it
we want to. Yes,
because we
that is
need to talk
that is
about
for
that
sure.
once it comes out. Arc
If we
2,
don't already
probably not.
have an anime episode by then, that will be at least our first anime episode talking.
Dude,
about
I
the animated
hope it
series.
comes out around April Fool's, so that could be an April Fool's episode.
Please,
Oh my
please.
god. All right,
I
moving
hope
on.
so.
Or else we're gonna talk about it the entire like next hour.
Because Vin Diesel literally just completely upended
stole the
my
show.
night.
Stole the show.
So bad.
Again, twice in a row. He's a madman.
All right, Fall Guys got season 3. Great, moving on. Looked
Wow.
cool. Winter themes.
Looks
Yeah,
really
no,
cute.
that's-
Looks like more
that's
Fall
about
Guys.
where I am
It's
with
more
it.
Fall
Yep,
Guys.
yep, right.
Outriders got a new trailer that is a little bit more cinematic. This is sort of Square Enix and People Can Fly's 3-player co-op game. It's similar to aiming for that like I don't want to say Destiny market, but almost the Anthem market of like disappointed Anthem players
They need somewhere to go. They're
who
like,
wants
"This-
a 3-player co-op shooter with like
whoever's
different.
left in Anthem is
classes.
clearly happy to be there. So
Yeah, but people that didn't stay but want an Anthem, this from what I've heard of the game from people that I've gotten like early looks, it actually seems to be shaping up pretty well. So fingers crossed that it isn't Anthem when it launches. Because I'll be down to play that. I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll be fun. I have a decent amount of faith in People Can Fly as well. So, yeah, that's about that. We've seen that game before. Moving on, we got in Wyatt. You want to take this one? Your boy coming out, the Necronomicon.
Haha, yes. All right. While I'm talking, I'm just gonna pull it up because I'm trying to. Yes,
Evil
no,
Dead the
it
game.
is. It is Evil Dead the game, which looked like some sort of co-op action shooter of some variety. Is anyone here familiar with Evil Dead in any way?
Passingly, yeah, not a ton, but
okay.
passingly.
Okay, so a brief just overview. Evil Dead trilogy of hilarious and totally over the top, goofy, corny horror movies made by Sam Raimi and the greatest man ever made. He was the Keanu Reeves before Keanu Reeves, Mr. Bruce Campbell.
Yeah,
greatest
And
thing ever made.
just saying. This looks like some kind of co-op shooter. They got the likenesses down. They got people from the TV show, which is cool. They've even got things from Army of Darkness, which is the third movie that took place in medieval times, because why the hell not? Yeah, looks
yeah. As
pretty
someone
cool.
who's not like super connected to Evil Dead, this looked fun. Like.
Oh,
I
Evil
saw a
Dead
dude in like
is
chainmail
great.
with the with not even the helmet, but the chainmail balaclava like thing. Coif, I think is the actual word, but it looks very fun. So
Yeah, it's Evil Dead is a series that's so like perfect for video games because it's so just.
but
mean,
really
you got
hasn't
Bruce
been done a
Campbell.
lot.
There was one on like the PS1.
It's been a
let's
while,
talk
though.
about that.
It's been a long
It's
time.
been a hot minute. But I mean, it's got Bruce Campbell running around with a chainsaw strapped to his arm and a shotgun. in the other hand. So like it was always made to be a video game, and it's taken people long enough, and I'm very excited. Looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
You also go watch those movies too.
And this is also where it started hitting home. There were a lot of zombie horde shooters in this Game
yes.
Awards.
I don't
Like,
care
this is our
how
third of
tired
the
people
night.
are of zombies. I love me a good zombie.
I
game.
think it
don't
just
care
because
who
these
you
games
are.
aren't releasing around the same time, it just seemed very weird because it was all on the same show
Yeah.
that we were getting these
Yeah.
reveals. All right, so then we got a classic. They kind of teased us for a minute. I think people were thinking this might be something a little more big, but it's Ghost and Goblins Resurrection. I love me some Ghost and Goblins, but
Art style did
Cute.
not look super great.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah.
I don't have
like
real
the-
issues with it, but I don't like it. It's like I would look at it and not be offended, but at the same time, I'm not particularly happy either. So,
The
Yeah.
original looked cooler. Like just.
and the weird thing to me is that like Ghost and Goblins holds up really well as an arcade game because it's just such a, and this looks like it's gonna play exactly the same.
Except for the BS where it makes you play the whole game again.
Yeah, which like I
It's
have a
kinda
feeling
dumb.
that's where
Hard
this will
as
be
hell.
better. But if you want Ghosts and Goblins, just go play the old one with save states, and then you've done it. You've got
If
Ghosts
they
and
don't add
Goblins.
save states, that would be a big.
Because
head
this
scratcher
doesn't
right
this
there.
doesn't look like it's particularly different from the old ones.
No, it just looks like the old one, but with not as good an art style in the slightest. So
Hey, but maybe it'll be really good. Maybe they'll add some like new levels. Be cool.
They'll add a battle royale.
Oh, dude, I
Yay.
actually I would probably be down for like a 99 player Ghosts and Goblins Tetris 99 type deal. That would
Don't give-
probably
don't
be
give them
insane.
ideas. Don't give them
Fine.
ideas.
I would
Give
play
them a
that.
I'd play that.
All right, then we saw Returnal, which I think is starting to win some of us over. Aside from Wyatt, who's already won over, but
I
yeah,
thought
it's
Returnal looked
looking
really cool.
better for me.
This looks really cool.
Although I
I'm
will
totally
say,
down.
$70 price tag for PS5. It's pushing it. I'm probably not going to get it at launch now because of that, but I
Yeah, it
am
doesn't
excited
look
to
like
playing it
$70.
whenever it drops.
Well, okay, we don't know if it looks like $70.
Well, the thing to me is they've said it's a roguelike type deal, and I'm very iffy unless they're doing something like above and beyond what my bar for roguelikes is super high right now because of Hades,
Yeah.
which is a $30 game. So coming off of Hades to a game that's
Well, and
asking
Risk
for
of
more
Rain
than
2.
double.
I mean, it's been kind of the
Yeah,
year
as well.
of,
Like roguelikes right now are
which,
big
now
and
I'm
really
thinking
good.
about it, I'm kind of surprised that wasn't even mentioned at the Game Awards at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, Risk of Rain 2 has been out for years already.
It doesn't feel new
know.
enough.
It released new though. Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Right.
but
Yeah,
I mean,
before
Among
release.
Us won how many awards, and that game's been out how long?
Yeah.
I don't know.
think it's
No
an
one played
excuse.
it until like 2 months ago.
Has anybody played anymore?
I don't
Alright.
know if anyone
Or
played
is
I've
it
been
gone
meaning to
hard?
play more
Did
of
it
it.
down?
Anyway.
Moving back, we're getting
Is
very
more
off topic
advanced?
from what the show is.
Okay.
Returnal looks interesting. We saw some cool gameplay. There's like some bullet hell bosses. That's about
I'm
it.
down. I like the setting
Me
for
too.
of that being a roguelike.
I'm
It's
not
interesting.
as mad at the name as I was.
I think it's a cool name. There, I said it. I don't even care. I think it's
I
a
would
cool
be
name.
more okay with it as like if it was Returnal, like with Eternal as the name, but it's Return and then AL, which it's just weird.
Well, I don't get it. It sounds cool to me, and I think it does kind of give an idea of what the game's about.
Yeah, you return back in the time loop.
It's a
Well,
it's a,
I
it's
think
a
that's why I'm
roguelike, and
more
you're
okay with it this
eternally
time.
Returning. What's wrong with that?
Because when it
It's
was
fine.
first revealed, we didn't know it was a roguelike. So
Well, I think
Returnal was just a
they
weird name.
hint at it that it was though.
Yeah, but not until the end of the trailer. They showed us the name before that. So I was very confused. But I'm still
Alright.
that
Alright.
name is still iffy to me.
I think it's cool.
I'm not a huge fan of the mashing words together, even though Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is one of the best games ever made. Still not a huge fan of mashing words together for your name. I think
It
it usually
depends.
does. It's usually just super generic looking, and like Returnal to me, I feel like I'm not gonna be able to Google that and find it easily.
It's pretty. I don't know if I agree with that, but
We'll see. We'll
well,
see.
we can put it to the test right now.
All right, moving on. We saw It Takes Two, which is Joseph Fares, I believe his name is, the guy from Way Out, and he made some major splashes at the Game Awards a few years ago with his crazy presentations. He's making a new game called It Takes Two, and I don't know, this was really, really cool looking. It had this fun toy box aesthetic.
I almost want to say this was game of show for me, just because there was a lot more to show off gameplay wise. It looked more complete than Crimson Desert did.
Yeah,
and we just got a better idea of what it was.
I think Crimson Desert was more surprising to me because I didn't think I would like it coming in.
Off on such a bad note.
Yeah, whereas Joseph Fares to me, like I'm gonna like whatever Joseph Fares makes. I've accepted Hazelight Studios is gonna be something I like. Like, even if I still haven't played Way Out, I love the game, and I've like seen multiple playthroughs at this point, and it's great.
Anyone who's any studio that's trying to bring back local co-op, I'm totally down.
Yeah,
you know.
It looks super fun. Super Meat Boy Forever got a release date, December 23rd, so soon. Yeah, that's it. Oddworld Soulstorm, we saw more Oddworld. It's like the same stuff we've seen before, so really not that not that much. Elder Scrolls Online's next expansion is going to be Gates of Oblivion. Again, we don't know anything else. Monster Hunter
still
Rise.
trucking along. Just saying, it's impressive.
Dude, MMOs have long lifespans because people get invested in them, and Elder Scrolls. I think Elder Scrolls Online, people think it's older than it is because of how long the beta was. It's because of how long that beta was for Elder Scrolls Online. I think people think it's older than it is. Elder Scrolls Online is still like one of the newest MMOs out there. And is probably going to continue going for a good few years, at least. Mm-hmm. I don't see them making a new thing.
Like until to have a really dedicated fan base, and it's got Bethesda behind it, so it's probably going to go on for
until Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. I don't see anything making a big dent in its player base because there are people that like Elder Scrolls.
Yeah,
and there's not really anywhere else to go for
fans
it.
Have got for a while at least, you know.
Because as much as I love modded Skyrim, if you're into modded Skyrim, you're into the mods and probably not Elder Scrolls lore. Whereas if you're into Elder Scrolls lore, like Elder Scrolls Online is a fantastic way to get more into that. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw some cool new stuff from Monster Hunter Rise. I'm personally really looking forward to this game. It's not coming out for a while, next year. Demo planned for January, but yeah, it's the Switch Monster Hunter sequel to Monster Hunter World, essentially. Looks very fun.
Yeah.
Moving on, Among Us got a new map. All right, great. I think the biggest piece of news here is that Jeff Keighley has a mask available in the game.
It's
He couldn't even keep a straight face. It was so funny. It was so good.
Yeah, it was cool. Moving on. Master Chief coming to Fortnite.
Moving on.
Yep, yes. Moving on. Yep. Well, actually, sorry. I also got to add Walking Dead's Daryl and Michonne coming in.
Oh yeah, they were also there.
Moving on.
And if you want to get Master Chief, 1,500 V-Bucks.
How much is that?
It's about $15, I think.
Oh, that's not that bad.
That's pretty bad for a skin.
That's pretty
it's a skin.
But it's the Master Chief.
Master Chief.
Yeah, I mean that is fair. I have a feeling
you are Epic's favorite kind of gamer. Just throwing it out there.
To be honest, I have a feeling people that buy that skin
because I don't like Master Chief or Fortnite.
People that buy the Master Chief Fortnite skin probably aren't buying any more skins because I have a feeling they're going to be into Master Chief enough that just being Master Chief is good enough.
Master Chief, yeah. Exactly.
It did make me really sad just watching the whole thing.
The whole thing was.
I'm all for crossovers, but mostly when they make sense, and this really just doesn't.
He was talking with Ninja. It was just this whole cringy crap.
Yeah, there was a lot of. I think we're hitting that point of being a little too old for that to be aimed. I don't think that is aimed at us anymore.
I don't get it.
And for good reason because we don't understand it. Moving on, Scarlet Nexus got a release window. It's the thing they showed off at the Xbox Series X reveal. They showed off that weird anime game. It looks kind of neat. It's an anime action RPG.
It's a Platinum game. I did for a second.
Yeah, it really does look like a Platinum game. It's by Bandai Namco, who makes a lot of anime action RPGs. It's coming in summer of 2021. That's about it. Just Cause is getting a mobile thing.
Oh yeah.
We don't know anything else about that aside from it's like this weird top-down-ish perspective.
It's a multiplayer thing.
Yeah,
and it's like, why don't you have some kind of multiplayer, thing for console and PC? I don't.
It's clearly a lot more limited than the actual game.
Give us an actual just open on world online thing for that already. Just come on, we've been asking for it for so long.
Yeah, then we also see after that, because we don't have any info about that. We don't even have a release window. We saw the Ruined King League of Legends turn-based RPG. Really didn't impress me. Gotta say, it seemed like they were just using the 3D models from League, and they didn't look that great being translated to a side view. Like I don't know. To me, it just the art just looked off.
It's
There was no impact to any abilities either. Yeah, I don't know what to think about this. I'm super curious as to whether or not this will be a good game when it comes out, or if it's just gonna be fan service. We'll see. All right, Mass Effect. This is our final bit of news. We're getting new Mass Effect. We already knew that.
On.
We knew that already.
Yeah,
but
it's continuing. It continues. What were the?
But
words
hey,
on the thing?
Liara showed up in this trailer,
Was
so
that
maybe
Liara?
yeah, that
Or
was
was
Liara.
that just another,
That was Liara.
Sorry. Like,
It has
don't
been
know.
confirmed. No, it's been confirmed that it's Liara.
All right.
That's Liara Tassoni. So this is minor spoilers for Mass Effect in that we've been told the canonical ending is something called the Destroy ending. I don't know what that means. I haven't played the ending of Mass Effect 3 in a long time and don't remember what that is.
Destroy.
Have they
We're not gonna
talked about if they're going to
talk
even
at depth of what that is.
mention Andromeda at all?
Andromeda takes place in a different galaxy with no communication, so I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Because that was like the
Just a
point
shame.
of Andromeda. Yeah,
Well,
I think
that's a
Andromeda
shame, because I
fell
think
flat
you
enough.
could have ran with what they had in Andromeda and made something a lot more interesting. They didn't even need to really like massively
I think
change anything.
the issue with doing that is that there weren't enough. The install base for Andromeda was low enough, and the reputation at launch was bad enough that making a sequel to it would see probably less people than played Andromeda, which was already really low.
It's not
Maybe
even that
bad
bad of a
association.
game.
Yeah, but when it launched, it was
I know,
really
I know,
bad.
I know.
Like,
I know.
we understand why it's that way.
No,
Although,
look,
hey,
I
if you want to play
understand.
Andromeda, go play it. It's fun right now.
It's really, I really think has not been given the love it deserves, in my opinion. But
I don't care.
Yeah,
I know
I
you
think
don't
that's
care,
the
Brett,
prevailing
just
thing.
be quiet for a second.
To me,
I've
the
been
big
quiet
thing
whole
is that,
time 'cause
like,
you've been talking.
do people want more Andromeda or more related to Shepard stuff primarily? I have
As
a
a
feeling
whole,
the vast
no.
majority are going to go related to Shepard.
That is a good point. As a whole, I think people want more stuff from, the original trilogy. Speaking
Yeah.
personally, because the ending, at least the ending that I got, affected me in the way that it did, I would just prefer they move on, because I don't think they should touch it. I think they should just leave it.
Yeah, I think the reality of this is that they know they can't just make another new Mass Effect without tying it into the originals, because they failed super hard with Andromeda.
See, they didn't though. They
did.
in terms of like setting up something, in terms of putting in the effort to be like, no, we're separating ourselves. I actually think they did quite a good job.
Yeah, they
from a
did, but
lore
the game itself failed spectacularly. Like,
But
it
the
doesn't
game
matter
is-
how
yes,
good the game was.
I agree with that, but I think just in their effort to try and like separate themselves from all of that, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, but as consumers, like, they failed. That's the reality of it, is that they're probably not going to... Andromeda's likely not to get another game just because of how poorly it performed, because of executives. It doesn't matter. It likely won't matter what the dev team thinks. If we get another Andromeda game, it's going to be pretty far down the line, I would bet, and probably with new characters. So, yeah, I think that it's just the reality of
shame.
like game development.
Can you agree with me that it's a shame though? Because working from Andromeda has potential.
I mean, I just want to see more sci-fi from BioWare, and it'd be good. I don't really care if it's related to Andromeda, or even related to Mass Effect. Like, I'm the kind of person, I don't have as much attachment to series as I think a lot of people do. So I just want to see more BioWare that's good, which I'm iffy on if that'll happen right now. Like, that's the big question in the air, is whether or not these games are going to live up to BioWare's reputation. Because at this point, they're losing most of it. They've lost a lot of goodwill over the last few releases they had. So,
And a lot of team members.
yeah, that's the big...
Which we already talked about last
We
episode.
did.
Yeah, so go watch that episode if you want more on that. But yeah, we've hit the point. We're a little over an hour in. We're right at the time where I get to hit the gong, bang, it's hit, and now we're talking about Cyberpunk.
Wow,
Boing.
Cyberpunk. My
So
goodness.
first, we are going to talk briefly about our own opinions. There will certainly be a games club on Cyberpunk as soon as we all get far enough in the game, although our spoiler policy for that might be different because this game has like multiple endings and a lot
We're
of
gonna have to
variation.
talk about how that's gonna work.
Yeah, so we don't know if that'll be exactly the same format as normal, but we'll definitely be talking about some spoilers, but we may not be talking about like the ending. We'll see. That'll be coming likely sometime in the next like month. We'll see. It depends on how long the game takes to actually finish, because I don't think any of us have yet. So
no.
yeah, it's only come out a few days ago, so it'd be a little surprising if anyone had.
And rushing this game would be the worst decision.
Yeah,
possible.
from what we've heard, rushing the game probably not a great idea. All right, moving on to the big ol' controversy.
The big bug in the room.
So, for
buggy
context,
elephant.
Cyberpunk reviews came out around a week and a half ago at this point, by the time this is coming out and you're listening to it. And the game is sitting pretty at like a 90 on Metacritic, on OpenCritic.
On PC.
On PC
Which is the only place
only.
they allowed reviews.
Because CD Projekt Red's executives pulled some shady stuff. And we're not going to give them a pass on that.
No, we are not.
Because I think we made it very clear we like CD Projekt Red. They've made some good games. What they have not done is made some good decisions regarding the release of Cyberpunk.
Yes.
So,
and I hate doing this to them, but we got to be fair. We got to be honest.
This
is some pretty crappy stuff.
Yeah,
that
this
they
is
pulled, and I'm not
really
okay
shady. And the thing to me that really hits me about it is it wasn't necessary to do this.
No.
Like, the game was not bad enough that they needed to be this shady about it, and they could have been transparent and say that, like, our PS4 versions aren't in a good state right now. Maybe we're gonna delay releasing the console version for a little while, but they're not gonna do that.
Typically speaking, is a very CDPR thing to do.
But they're not gonna
in the past, they've been very upfront, like, hey, we got this feature's going to change. Like, we're taking out third-person cutscenes. We're taking out wall running just because we couldn't get it working. And people, for the most part, understand when you make those kind of announcements.
Yep.
For the most part.
So the big thing to mention for context of this is that right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, which coincides with basically the highest sales by volume year of games ever, like by a metric ton. Like, all the consoles are selling out instantly. Both Xbox and PS5 have had,
as I'm sure many of you
the
are
biggest
aware.
launches ever. Yeah, plenty of people can't get them, myself included. So yeah, it's a very hectic launch right now. But that means games releasing right now, especially around this holiday period, are getting tons of sales. So people saying that the game could have been delayed are likely very wrong, at least in the executive mindset of, yeah, they're not going to delay Cyberpunk. They can't afford to delay Cyberpunk anymore because they already missed Black Friday, right? That they already missed one of the biggest sales days of the year. They can't miss Christmas in the holiday season. So yeah, the game had to release now to probably please executives. Like, and the other thing is, Jason Schreier's right when he talks about crunch, that like delays will often just extend crunch and not actually solve the issue, unless it's handled very specifically, like the Animal Crossing team was handling it, in that they foresaw the fact that they were going to be working crunch that past bit and then just delayed and then hit their target mark and didn't keep adding things. Yeah, so it's really hard to manage that kind of stuff, and it's very clear Cyberpunk had some issues. And also, something important to add here is that a lot of people will say Cyberpunk's been in development for like 7 to 8 years, which isn't. It's half true. So we know, we know Cyberpunk was in concept development and writing for around that amount of time, but they didn't start developing the actual game until the last set of Witcher 3 DLC. So the game itself,
which makes sense because they're not going to be working
Yeah.
full-time development on both at the same time.
Yeah.
That would be insane.
and it's also DLC for game is usually when a post-launch DLC is happening. That's when teams start to split off into different projects because the teams that handling that DLC, there's smaller amounts of content. They're usually not necessarily skeleton crews, but less than half the original team. Although for Witcher, it's probably a bit different because those DLCs had so much to them that I would bet they probably kept on most of the team on that. And then once that final DLC was ready to launch, they started moving over into Cyberpunk more heavily. But yeah, so the actual dev time is probably a little closer to 4 years and not the 7 or 8 that people keep throwing out there. And it's pretty clear the game underwent a lot of probably development restructures of what it was going to be pretty early on, which is pretty normal. That's not a thing to get super worried about. It's just there's a lot more remnants of like hints as to what those could have been left in the main game than you usually would see.
Development changes. Things change during that time. That's totally
Which leads us
normal
to the state that Cyberpunk has launched in, primarily on consoles. The PC also has probably about half of these issues, but the consoles right now, especially the base PS4 and base Xbox One, the game is unplayable. Like,
let me make this perfectly clear. No matter how much praise or otherwise we put on this in the next however much time, do not buy this game on a base PS4.
Absolutely not. Like,
do not.
It's not worth it.
For your own good.
And I'll also say that, like, when we do that Cyberpunk Games Club, we're likely going to be primarily talking about the game and actively avoiding a lot of the bugs and whatnot, because we're going over them now. So when you see that, you have to go into it with the knowledge that, like, we still encountered all these bugs and had a bad time with them. The game itself is still really fun, but you have to get past that layer of, like, bugs and mess.
It's also
just
important
disappointing.
to keep in mind as well, at the end of the day, Cyberpunk is a video game made by human beings. And you have to keep
chill with the
your
death threats
expectations in check as a result.
And chill with the death
It's not going to change your life. It is not going to cure the coronavirus.
It's
it is
not
going to
bring your dog back. I'm sorry. You got to forget about him. He's gone.
I see we both watched the critical video.
Yeah.
But that's very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's also, there's been tons of death threats sent to the team. Don't do that. It doesn't solve anything.
I feel like you literally these days, in the public eye, you can't do anything and not get threatened with your life.
Exactly.
Literally,
like, you literally...
whatever you do, you get a death threat.
Hey, that's oddly Cyberpunk as well. Like,
yeah.
See, the weirdest thing about a lot of this review controversy with Cyberpunk, and not just review controversy, but launch controversy, is that a lot of it is just, like, very fitting with what a megacorp in a Cyberpunk setting would do.
Yeah.
So CD Projekt Red is kind of now in this weird meta position of making a game.
They're all doing it on purpose. It's viral marketing.
CD Projekt Red chose to play Corpo. So
Oh, God.
But yeah, basically right now, if you don't have a great PC or you're playing on last gen consoles, hold off. For a while.
You don't have a great PC. We don't mean like, oh, I have like this low mid end.
If you got anything below a 2060, don't buy the game.
When we say great, we mean you actually need like a top end gaming PC.
Yeah. The game's been having some issues. Although apparently part of that may be to them including an improper config file limiting the amount of VRAM it can use.
That would be absolutely incredible.
So that might be part of it, but this is just now news that I've gotten, so I don't know if that's actually the case, but apparently that might be affecting primarily NVIDIA GPUs and not really AMD or anything, but...
That would explain a lot of the pop-in.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, it would.
Basically right now the game has a ton of weird rough edges and bugs and just crazy iffy things. Like, and I don't know about if I'm talking about this with you guys, if this is like your biggest gripe with it right now, but my biggest issue right now is the double tap to dodge.
I hate it.
It's
so many times.
I can't do stealth. I can't navigate around rooftops.
I don't even use it. Because it's just
I try
so
not to, but I'm
obnoxious.
so used to like.
But you can't disable it.
Micro adjusting with A
and look, that's coming from me. I've made it very clear on this show many times. Anytime you put any kind of dash in a video game, I'm gonna like it. This is one of the few times I've ever seen a dash in a video game, and I'm like, I don't like this.
And it's entirely because of the control input. It's not even because the dash is bad. It's the control input.
Yep.
Of being double tapping in a direction. It's just so bad.
It sucks if you're trying to do it on purpose. It sucks if you do it by accident. It's a lose-lose situation.
It's just uncontrollable.
By accident is a problem.
Yes, yeah.
And the solution is so simple. Just allow people to disable it and bind dashing to a key. But that doesn't exist right now. And like that's a super easy thing to add. So I'm sure it will get added, but it is incredibly frustrating that that is not something that got caught in QA.
Oversight as well, like
it's a small.
That's very basic.
And I feel like that leads us into our overall thoughts, because that is one thing. I feel like there are a bunch of just small oversights.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, before we get to
nothing-
our crazy overall thoughts, the biggest thing to say is that like right now the bugs are insane. Like legitimately, it's hard to say how bad they are on those consoles, especially, and even on PC. Like we've been having a relatively okay experience, but it's relatively okay in that you deal with the occasional T-posing, your hair disappearing constantly, like. It's still pretty
I've had times where I'm
buggy.
driving in a car with someone, and if I reload, I'm sitting in the same driver's seat as they are, so we're just occupying.
Yeah,
the
I've
same
had that
space, and I
happen.
can see their eyeballs and their tongue and their teeth floating in space. And it's
I think-
really creepy, and it gave me nightmares.
The real problem is that it's just so immersion breaking. Like
Yeah.
the whole lack of performance, like all that stuff where I'm like almost more focused on my frame rate to see like why is this dropping? What setting should I change? Or like, I'm too focused on this guy who's sliding on his ass across the like desert or something to
Yeah.
like
Just
be immersed in
T-posing
this
and like
world.
flying into the sky.
Or like especially in cutscenes are the worst. Like I'm talking to a character and she's taking a sip of whiskey or whatever, and the bottle's like 10 feet across the room floating.
Dude,
like-
the weirdest bug I had, you're talking to just a quest giver, and she's making hand motions, and a phone is tied to her hand motions, right?
Oh yeah.
But the phone is
the
3
same-
feet away from her and just waving like it's on a stick.
I've had
someone
several
the same
times-
thing happen to them. Yeah.
I've had several times where Keanu Reeves' character is supposed to be like interacting with a scene, but he's leaning on a chair that's like several feet in front of him, so he's just leaning on nothing. Honestly, it's been I've had more issues with performance than bugs, but where all of the bugs just seem to like cluster in one spot for me was during a side mission. I was talking to you guys about it before. I'm not gonna say which one it is, but it was a really emotional side quest that just I think for all of us it hit different and it hit really hard. It was very emotional, but I was just getting all these obnoxious little problems that just completely took me out of the emotional experience of that, and it was so frustrating. I think that's the
It's-
only time where
yeah.
it's really made me frustrated, because I haven't gotten anything super game breaking, thank God. But
And it's more frustrating in the way like you can tell that this game right now, like this moment in this game would be so great if
And-
this
and
man
to be
wasn't
clear-
T-posing. Like
and to be clear, that moment was still great. I was
it still
able to
hits.
get
It's
that.
there, like you still
But it's hit with
understand the
that
story.
little taint of like, I really wish that character
Hey.
wasn't T-posing. Or
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not done yet.
it's like I think right now
Yeah.
the overarching sentiment is that Cyberpunk will probably deserve the review scores it got in 3 to 4 months.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
the bugs
The
are
game minus the
so
performance and bugs
rough.
is the reviews that it got, I think.
And-
for the
and-
most
Yeah.
part.
This is also where
As far
we
as
were
I-
talking about like expectations are huge right now. If you go, so this is where I think there are two really prevailing views on the game right now between different groups of people. If you look on like the Cyberpunk subreddit right now, which I would recommend you don't do because it's a cesspool,
Oh
It's
my God.
kind of
everyone
funny, though.
there is just saying like worst game I've ever played, awful. Like how could this release in 2020? And then if you look on like any other general games discussion platform, people are pretty okay with it. Like it's buggy,
Well,
but they're having a lot of
okay.
fun.
Here's what makes me mad, right? Is when people are like, "Oh, they lied to us. They lied to us." It's like, all right, bugs aside, because that is very shady, and I agree. But from a content and from a features perspective, the game itself, they did not. They were very like if you can compare the first mission you have in Night City to the very first gameplay segment that was released, and they are very almost the same. Like they show off some abilities and guns that aren't in that section because in the actual game it's much earlier, but from features and content, it's very
Yeah.
there's nothing that they haven't lied to us about, that they haven't stated that's being taken out. And I just that is such a false, it makes me so mad because they didn't lie to us from a content perspective at all, in my opinion. It's very
I think a lot of
frustrating to read
people
that.
took the amount of detail on things like the Night City Wires to mean that we were getting essentially a Bethesda RPG, but with CD Projekt Red's storytelling, and that's not true. That's not what we got. What we
And
got is
you can
basically
make the argument that that's on them for not disclosing that properly, but I never got that impression.
yeah.
personally.
I think that really heavily depends on how you took that stuff, and I think that's a lot of people projecting what they wanted.
Definitely.
And if you, for example, I came in with the expectation that I was getting basically a spiritual successor to Deus Ex. And
Yes.
I am more than satisfied with that. Like, it is
Yep.
vastly filled my expectations. There are like minor gripes. There's things I might have like minor nitpicks, but it's all stuff that's like, oh, I don't necessarily like that I'm picking up as many guns as I am and having to trash them and whatnot. But that's a minor thing. That's not like a problem with the game design. It's just there's a little too much loot. And
It's
stuff like
probably
that
how they
double
help
tapping
kind of balance
dodge.
their economy, but it's not. You're spending more time than I would have liked doing so.
Yeah, it's like I wish they didn't make you have to loot everything as much as you do. But all of that is like relatively minor stuff that I can get over, and that really doesn't impact my enjoyment moment to moment. And I think the thing that people really wanted is for like Night City to be this crazy open world on the level of something like Red Dead, or have like the NPC detail of Watch Dogs, and it doesn't. Now this is where the one like major misleading thing that they did say comes through is early on in development it was stated there'd be like 1,000 plus NPCs in Night City with their own day and night cycles and like routines.
Rip.
That doesn't exist. That is the one point where I'm like, yeah, that was either
Yeah, I
that
don't
got
remember
cut.
talking about that.
They
to be
did.
honest.
They did talk about it.
Not that it didn't happen. I just don't remember it.
Well, because it was in a press release. It wasn't in stuff that was like, it wasn't in like a Night City wire. So it's pretty old, and that can be mostly attributed to them like realizing that was too ambitious, which is okay, but it's very clear that they didn't get acceptable band-aids for those issues up in time.
Yeah.
And that like NPCs in this game, and this is stuff that like it sounds major when I'm saying it, but when you're doing missions, none of this stuff happens. So like when you're doing the main content of the game, none of this is really playing in. But if you're riding through the open world on your bike or something, and you want to get in a car race or something, you can't do that. The police system is such a like garbage bin that it basically shouldn't exist.
It's the
Oh,
gamest
it's
game
miserable.
that ever game.
It just spawns police behind you, and they can't use their vehicles because for some reason it seems like either the driving AI is broken or it doesn't fully exist. Like they didn't program police being able to chase you and stuff like that, which is pretty sketchy. Like that's the kind of thing that if they have that police rep system is a high priority. So instead it'll spawn police behind you, including spawning them behind you if you're on like a rooftop or something and you snipe someone. So a little weird. There's stuff where like if you turn around and then turn back around, depending on like when the NPCs are being refreshed, you may just have a different crowd of NPCs in front of you.
And that goes for cars
Yeah.
as well.
So the wildest thing with cars is I turned around once, turned back around, and just noticed the car in front of me was in the same spot, different car, completely different car. I was like, what? And then I did it again and turned back around, different car. And the weird thing is that doesn't happen consistently. It's not all the time. It seems to be in like specific areas. So I can't pin down what's happening, but clearly something is not right with how cars and open world city AI is being handled. But those are relatively minor issues because if you're doing missions, that doesn't impact you.
Right.
Yeah, so that's also where like my chief complaint about the game is that the open world is not very interactable to the point where I don't fully see why it exists, because there's so little that you can do in the open world that takes advantage of it being an open world. If that makes sense. Like there's no side games.
I understand that entirely. I think just I prefer it to be there personally.
Well, yeah, I
think
prefer
that
it to be
mostly-
there, but it feels hollow. Right.
Even in the state that it's in currently, like I understand that, like why have it if that like I get that, but for me, there's such an immersion factor to it of like I'm just walking around Night City, and like even if there's not a lot to interact with, you're still seeing a lot of things happening, right? Like there, it's not to say that there isn't anything interesting about it, because you do see like NPCs bump into each other. There's like police arresting people in real time and stuff, and it's all cool to see while you're
Yeah, but
walking or
where
driving
that starts to
through
break
missions
around
or
is if you
something.
go to that same street corner, you're always going to see police arresting
It's,
someone.
yeah, it's always
If you go to a
always
specific
there.
place, you're always going to see the same people having the same conversation. It's
No,
very
and,
much.
and I get that. I do. I don't know. It's a personal thing. I kind of like.
I don't want to give
being
CD
there
Projekt a
regardless.
pass for that. Is basically what I'm saying, because I think they don't.
No, I agree. I agree.
I do agree with Wyatt that like yeah, it's good it exists because it's a fun city to explore, and the city itself is great. Like I love the environmental design. I love the level design. The visuals and aesthetics are amazing. The audio is amazing, but those NPCs and interactivity really just kind of falls apart. Especially because like there are all these arcade games sitting around, and one of them's called Roach Race. I just want to play Roach Race.
And as someone who just not too long ago completed the Cold War campaign that has not one, but like 5 or 6 different completely playable arcade machines in the campaign.
It's something that other franchises do pretty readily. Like even Witcher had Gwent as that interactive, and I think just one thing like that would have gone miles for the game. Like having one side minigame thing that was just an optional thing you could do in the open world to pass time. I would have loved that. And I have a feeling we might get something like that down the line. Because CD Projekt has said we're going to be getting... They're doing the same thing they did with The Witcher 3, where we're getting free DLC for a while, and then there'll be expansions. So I'm very much hoping one of those free DLC is like a world interactive thing of some kind. But yeah, that's really what feels like it's missing, is that level of interactivity with the open world is just not there.
Just some cool open world stuff.
As well as the AI just kind of being... It feels like it's broken right now.
Yeah. But you guys, you can go have an 18+ cutscene with a guy who looks like he's made out of gum for the first 2 parts of it, and he finally loads in, and his model's there.
Look, I also gotta say, for a city...
The Gum Man.
The Gum Man.
For a city surrounded, like there is a like brothel on every street corner. From my knowledge, there are 2 NPCs that you can talk to get those scenes. I'm like...
2, yeah, I think.
I'm a little bit like, come on guys, you can do better than that. Not that I don't care that much, but at the same time, I'm like, if you have it exists because you have these 2 characters that do it, why not just go crazy with the Cyberpunk stuff and put it on every street corner? You know, like...
Well, and also remember them, like, touting how many hours of, like, sex scenes they recorded.
Yeah,
various characters
it's weird.
And stuff, you know?
And for a game that goes, like, in my opinion, like, overboard with the amount of, like weird, sexy body mod stuff on, like, billboards and things that are, like, super obnoxious.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, I mean, I get how it's obnoxious, but there's also a lot of...
It fits the setting.
It
really does.
There's a lot of story and lore reasons for it being that way.
It's still overboard, and again, you know, I've specifically gone around to watch a bunch of different people that did get the game get it, because I'm not buying that at full price. But it just did seem like not necessarily overboard, but just like in your face. Like there's no nuance. It is like I can't give an overblown example because then Ryan's gonna have to rate this 18+. But like you kind of know what I'm saying. At least in my opinion, it seemed like very obnoxious and overblown for something that is just like a part of like Cyberpunk. Like
I'll say the game does address that kind of thing in side missions and in some parts of the story that makes it a lot more clear. I can't go into detail both for age rating reasons and for not spoiling the story. I think if you were to fully play the story, it wouldn't bother you.
There's a side mission really early on. I'm not going to say what it is, but I think Ryan and Ben both know what I'm talking about. That has a lot to do with that sort of thing, and they use it in a really good, really like I would say I'll say tasteful way in comparison to like the world.
They tackle it with far more nuance than you would expect from a game that's as outwardly filled with that kind of thing.
Yeah. They handle it really, really well, in my opinion. Which
is to get to another one of my complaints. So everyone knows, huge advertising boom for the game, there is genital customization. Incredible. You never see it once you're in the game. The only time you'll see that kind of thing is if you change clothes on the menu. Your character can just not have underwear on, which then makes me more confused because I'm like, I'm in the middle of the street. Of course I would have underwear on. Why is my dingle out when I'm changing clothes? It doesn't make sense.
I think that's a bug, Ryan.
But I don't know.
Because every time I change clothes, he's just wearing underwear, and I have the sensor off.
Do we have a case of Bethesda's bug in a non-Bethesda game?
I don't know. Understand
it could either be a bug or just part of the game.
Well, I've seen some streamers and whatnot playing it that it does the same thing. Where like if you take your pants off and put another pair on, it just your dingle's there for like for like 5 frames. You just see a floppy dong. And it's so
See, I've
funny.
never gotten that. I've always just like, even with the sensor like turned off, for me, it's just
Well, you started your game with the sensor on by accident, right?
or something. I really don't.
I have a
thought I
feeling
turned
that
it
would be
off.
why. Is that
I
something bugged when you
literally
started
I
your
was
game?
changing clothes. I had the sensor off. I was changing clothes like not 10 minutes before the podcast started, and I just had underwear on.
Yeah, so I would say try just like make a new game randomly and see if you can change an item in that new game, and if it does it.
Because the sensor
If you have the
is,
sensor off
is
the entire
definitely
time.
off in other areas. Like I can confirm that it's not on anymore, but I don't know.
I just don't get it.
That might
I
be
wish,
a bug. I don't know.
but I've seen it in every playthrough. Like it's consistently in everything I've watched. So I have a feeling that's a bug
Interesting.
on your end and not on my end.
Well, it's
If
a
that
bug
makes
that
sense.
I'm kind of happy to have.
It's
I
bugged
think.
either way. I wish mine was like that because it doesn't make sense to me. And having
Underwear just doesn't exist in this world. Get over
and
it.
having been through one of the romance options in the game, yeah, I can say nothing gets used. None of that matters at all. So I'm like, why does it exist? It exists for a marketing push, is why. Like
Yeah.
that
And
genital
maybe it
customization
was
is for a
something that they
marketing
wanted
push.
to do, but like having a game that is that explicit and getting that to ship around the world is very difficult.
Yeah, and so I think with
There might have been a
that,
moment
that's
where their
where I
hands were
agree with
tied.
Brett of like that customization is a little excessive if it does literally nothing ever.
Yeah.
And it is also
I
super
agree.
in your face. So yeah, I think
agree.
that's the one area where I do agree that it goes a little overboard, or it needs, or something could be bugged. Like that's the other thing. Something could definitely be bugged.
That's the
on
crazy
either
thing about
end.
this game right now is you can never tell if something is that's the way it's supposed
Yeah.
to be, or it's just some gigantic horrible bug. You just cannot tell sometimes.
It is a case of Bethesda's bug. You don't know if it's supposed to be there or if.
I'll
it's
also
a
say,
bug.
as much as we talk about Bethesda bug, this game has bugs in a different way. So the one
Super
really
bugs.
nice thing is that Cyberpunk doesn't have the mathematical bugs that Bethesda games usually have, of like perks just not working or incorrectly applying to weapons. Like from everything I've seen, I have not gotten a bug where like if you have a certain stat upgraded, it reduces the damage on a weapon for some reason, which Skyrim still has to this day. Like Skyrim still has tons of those, so I'm really glad Cyberpunk doesn't have that. But there are still some major issues of like there's a throwing knife perk bug. I assume it's a bug because if it's not, it's ridiculous. Of you can pick up knives in the game, and if you have that perk, you can then throw them at people. But if you throw them at someone, you cannot retrieve them in any way. And the knives are rare loot, like every other melee weapon in the game. And they take up a lot of inventory space. So you could, if you have 10 knives, you can throw a knife 10 times. Plus, if you're doing that, the way you have to throw the knife is it takes up a slot of your 3 weapon slots you have. So in reality, you can only throw 3 knives until you need to go to your inventory, re-add knives back in, and throw 3 more. But if you accidentally throw your good knife, it's gone forever. Sorry.
That's it.
I feel like
Which
that
is-
has to be a bug.
That has to be a
Has
bug
to
because
be
there's
a
like
bug.
there's an entire perk tree about that knife throwing thing. So I think it has to be a bug. And I hope that gets sorted out at some point because I really want to do a playthrough where I use that because that'd be super fun.
It's important to know everything we're complaining about right now, in my opinion, is very small, and compared to
It's
the
a lot
amount
of small stuff.
Fun. It's a lot. No, I'm not saying it is a lot, but compared to how much fun I've been having with the game overall, I don't want to say I don't care, but I've just been having so much fun with the game.
Yeah, the way I would put it is that I definitely don't feel like my money was wasted. I certainly feel like I'm getting my $60 worth out of it, despite the
Mhm.
bugs. And once the bugs are resolved, it's gonna be even better.
Oh baby,
like-
yeah.
Because
Right,
the amount of like emotional impact the story's had so far has been doing a lot for me, especially.
2 side quests for me have just been like either oh my god this is great or nearly brought me to tears.
All right, Ben,
You know,
you had
it's-
something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that config file you were talking about earlier, there's like a little fix on it on the subreddit, and if you're having bad FPS, you should definitely check it out because I just did it and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it
Just
can
regular
almost double
smoothness
your frame
and,
rate.
like, not just raw FPS, but like just the smoothness of everything and the load times especially are way shorter. So
Yeah.
I will link it to you
Interesting.
all after this.
Yeah, so that exists. I have a feeling that'll get patched in by CDPR by the time this podcast is out, especially if it's
'cause,
as
like,
easy
so
of a fix
the
as it
issue is
exists.
if they're using like console spec like limitations on your VRAM and regular RAM usage. Like the regular RAM usage is locked to 1500 megabytes, which is like ridiculous, and like your VRAM is locked to 3 gigs. So like if you have better than that, which
Every
pretty much
PC
everybody
basically
like,
does.
everybody does now, like you're not getting the most out of your PC. So
Although I have heard specifically this is like only a limitation on NVIDIA GPUs. I don't think it affects AMD right now.
yeah, I don't know. about that.
Probably because of some weird PC stuff that we don't understand. But
Yeah,
that is
but
the
it's as simple as a
general bit for
config
that.
file fix. So
Yeah, a lot of these fixes seem like they'll be pretty easy. The bigger problems are the AI stuff, but even then, those issues aren't preventing people from enjoying the game. I think it's just immersion breaking and very weird.
yeah,
And yeah, like the one persistent bug I've had that is kind of bothering me is that Keanu's character has some like graphical effects that happen around him quite often, and those graphical effects for me constantly are in a square. Like I feel like the transparency is
I
just
haven't had
not.
that happen. I've had those like glitchy effects happen even though he's left, and I had to because it was so annoying and it was like kind of a hurting my eyes a little bit. So what I ended up doing was going to sleep in my apartment, and that seemed to fix it.
Yeah, no spoils,
gotta
Wyatt,
take
but
a nap.
that's a thing that happens. That's part of it. And they do give you the option to disable those effects in the menu if they really are bothering you, so you can get rid of them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And again,
for me the weird thing is
a bug that was pretty easy to.
it just keeps popping up that he's just surrounded by a square. I don't. Something's going wrong
I've
here.
had that a few times too, where it's like
Yeah.
for some reason the texture like isn't loading properly, and like the transparency's
Yeah,
not
I think
there
the
or something,
transparency
like-
layer is just not happening. And the same thing happens in like the menu. There's just one area that has that same effect, and it's just a big square, and it looks really out of place. So
I do want to spend some time really talking about what I like. To be honest,
Yeah, no, we totally.
I
should.
want to get there because it is important that I've been having a really good time, and I pretty much agree with Ben in that like bugs aside, I think a 90 what it has on Metacritic is pretty apt, at least from what I've played, because
yeah, I gotta say,
I've
like,
been-
I think the one universal thing all of us that have played it can agree on is that the people complaining that the story's not well written are out of their
Are
minds.
bonkers out of their minds. I don't
I-
understand what
Or
people
straight
do
up
about.
didn't do any of the side content because
or even
this
saying that
Even
it's
then.
short. Even saying that it's short isn't correct either, because it's really one of those games where it's like you get so much more out of the main.
it's
quest than
correct
doing
in that
side
you
content.
can rush the main quest in like 15-20 hours if you really
Why would
want
you
to.
want to?
It's not
Why?
that kind of game.
But you're locking
Why would you do that
yourself
for any
you're
game?
locking yourself out of all these side characters. You're preventing certain actions from happening in the story because I think this is something that is important to know going in, is that like what you do outside of the main story does affect things in the main story. It's not like Skyrim, where if you are doing the main quest, it's a separate thing from everything else. The main story in Cyberpunk is the main story, and if you're doing side things, those will tie back in pretty often. Not all the time, but pretty often.
Yeah.
And like
It's
even
really
so,
more about the connections, like in the people you meet, than it is about
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
the
And-
events
and
that are
if-
happening.
well, I can
And
say
just
there
in
was
case
one.
you needed a reminder. Witcher is very similar, where
Yeah,
the
yeah,
main story
absolutely.
is very good, but so many of the side missions are just incredible, like so well made.
And even
And-
for I think one thing that like the level of interactivity between like the side stuff and the main story is a bit deceptive, because you might think it's just the main side missions, but I got a unique dialogue option that let me get out of a fight in a main story mission by doing a super quick side mission that was just listed as it wasn't even listed as a side mission, it was listed as a gig, which are like just
Yep.
side, like super short side quests that you're hired out to do. I did that, and because I did that, I interacted with a certain character in that gig that and killed them because like they're an enemy, and then I was able to use that to intimidate someone down the line in a completely what I thought was unrelated thing in the main
I think
story.
I had the same thing. I think I know what you're
Yep,
talking about.
and it blew
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, I remember that dude. The only reason I remembered his name is because I read the emails on his laptop and was like, oh, that's what his name is.
Yep. Yep.
It was crazy.
Speaking of the emails, that is another thing that I wanted to praise the game for, is because many times a lot of your side content is activated by either like FaceTime calls or like text messages from various people that you've met. And so it's this great thing where like side quests will come to you rather than you having to go to the side quest, if that makes sense. Because in so many other, open world games with side missions, you have to walk over to the person in order to initiate it. Whereas here, they kind of take out that process, and they just have the people call you directly. And I think it's such a great way to like pace out side content in a way.
Yeah.
I love
Though I
that
will
feature
add,
so much.
there was a specific set of side missions related to like, it's just essentially radiant missions, not radiant missions, but you're retrieving vehicles for someone. I really wish there was a way to make those calls not happen so often, because they happen constantly. I really
yeah.
It's like I like the mission, I like the character.
Constantly getting calls from
AI driver boy.
AI driver boy, and like just everybody. Because there's like there's a couple of quests that you get that are like, go to this area or whatever and find this thing.
But for some reason, whenever you pass that area,
every time you go there, you'll
get the call. And the thing is, it's not a short call either. It's like a call with like 4 different lines of dialogue that are like 10 seconds each that aren't skippable, that happen next to each other. Because the calls tend to not have skippable dialogue like the rest of the stuff. So you're just stuck listening to it and like interrupting your music.
Sometimes I'll leave an area like after just getting a quest and get a call from 2 people at once. And they're like overlapping and stuff.
I haven't had that happen to me yet, but...
Yeah, I've had that happen before.
Yeah, Delamain needs to chill out. So
Delamain, it's really just Delamain's fault.
Yeah, it's just that specific series of like side missions. It'll constantly alert you.
But no, I still really like the way that they handled that side content. Like, yes, it does get
for sure.
a little overlapping, but I really
love
the way
it's generally specifically that one thing of like it happening every time you come in and out of an area instead of just when you enter the area the first time. Yeah, it's a relatively simple fix too. Like that's the recurring theme with a lot of this, is that a lot of this stuff is relatively simple fixes. Clearly it's going to take a while because despite all the delays, these bugs are still existing. So it's going to be a while. But hopefully most of these issues get sorted out, and the game can like really be as good as it could be underneath all of the layer of bugs.
As good as it is underneath the bugs, I think is how I would.
Well, I don't think it's that good until it gets past those bugs. Like the bugs still exist right now, so it's still detracting from the experience. But as soon as those are finished.
I think it does say something though that we're having this much fun despite.
Oh, absolutely! It is the only game I've played in the last since it came out. The only game I've played. Like I'm having tons of fun with it.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty bad about like just playing 5 different games at the same time and having it mentally mess me up. But like I haven't really been able to play. I mean, the only reason I'm playing another game right now is because you can't play it. If you're doing the podcast or something, because
there's too much.
You have
stuff
no
going
idea
on.
what's gonna happen. But it's like for me, what's important, I've talked about it before, writing characters is so important for me in a game like this, and A+ material in that in that regard. But it's also the side missions that these characters are in are also super engaging and
tons of like high budget set piece stuff even in side missions.
Oh yeah, what they do really, really well is there's no cutscenes, right? Everything is done seamlessly with that first person camera, and they do such a good job of like, as you're talking to this person, you're also like leaning over a railing or you're sitting down and having a drink or something like that. And what's great is that they're not just cinematic moments that are all in first person, but you have some say on over what they look like, because you can either choose to have a drink with someone or not, and it's such a small thing that doesn't matter, but it just helps you create that cinematic moment. It helps it make it your own more, which I love,
Yeah, I do think that's where the game really excels, is that kind of... And I think a lot of people were probably iffy on the removing the third-person dialogue cameras, but for me, it definitely paid off. Like, I think they made the right decision with that.
The option, no, I think ultimately they had to pick, or they had to come to a decision.
Because the sheer amount of, like, cutscenes and dialogue in this is insane. Like,
even for small, little... and just for the small little gigs and side missions and stuff. And if there's another thing too that I can praise is that as someone who's coming off of playing a batch of Ubisoft open world games recently, I really appreciate how much time was spent on the narrative through line for even the smallest like gigs that you do. And whether that's them telling it to you directly, you learning about it, or even just like, okay,
multiple email
here's the mission, go
sequences.
do it. But if you want more information, I'll send you like a little text or something that has a bunch of more information on it. And it just there's an emotional purpose for everything you're doing, no matter what you're doing, which I love.
Yeah. And I think there's a very good chance that like the amount of voice acting V does in this game might be up there for the most I've heard a voice actor have to do in a game ever.
Oh, it's
Like-
absurd.
Because V has like 4 or 5 dialogue options for almost every choice, and all of
Not
them are
to
voice
mention-
acted and different.
Not to mention it changes based on the decisions you've made, and it also changes
life path,
depending on
the order of quests you
your
do.
starting path.
Like
Your life
even
path. It's
the
crazy.
order of quests you do will change how you talk in certain missions, which is crazy. Like there's just such
I thought
a good
Hades
level
has
of
a
respect
lot, but
for
I
that.
feel like this kind of takes the cake.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know?
Like
It's so much.
they put so much focus on it. The one complaint I do have with I don't even want to say complaint necessarily because it's not something that I think they can fix because of it's the nature of doing this amount of voice acting, and I do think this is an argument for not having voice acting in certain situations. Although I think for Cyberpunk it wouldn't make sense, but it's the fact that no matter what your life path start was or how you play your V always has a relatively similar personality. You basically have a few broad personality choices for how you treat V, and because of the fact that voice acting is always tonally done and delivered in a certain way, your V will always kind of fit into that specific archetype of character.
Mhm.
Depending on who you are, that'll bother you more or less. So for me, I mean, I
It
really had
bothered
to.
me. Yeah, go ahead.
I had to really adjust my like frame of mind for what my character was like, because I like to make characters and have like a backstory for them and think up some stuff to be like get into character when I'm playing an RPG like this. So that
Ryan
way
and
when
I
I do
play
a
very
next
similar
when I
Vs
do a
at the
next
moment.
playthrough, I can do a different V that acts differently. And I still think you can do that in this game, especially with the male and female. Their delivery are very different, and I think different in good ways. So you've got 2 good options for like a different style to play. But V very heavily leans towards Street Kid no matter what you're doing a lot of the time, of like that like Night City Street dialogue style. And I have a feeling if they weren't voice acting everything, there could have been way more variation in that, but I wouldn't like that, if that makes sense. Like I don't think it's a bad decision that they made. It's more that you need to go in expecting that regardless, you're not going to be making your own Cyberpunk character to the degree that I think a lot of people wanted to. You're going to be playing V. Regardless, like you don't get to name your character in character creation. You're V.
And speaking personally, so again, Ryan and I are playing very similar kind of Vs at the moment. We both picked Nomad. I think we're pretty similar in that regard. It was something that I didn't like at first. I didn't like his sort of like trying too hard to be cool kind of voice, but I definitely feel like it's something I kind of got used to.
It's grown on me. Yeah.
It's growing on me. I don't think every line needs to be delivered in that way because it feels like he has kind of one mode. But it's definitely and maybe it has something to do with like him opening up to more characters, and so it kind of changes based on that, but it definitely grew on me over time, so I wouldn't say it's the biggest issue in the world for those of you.
It's just I think you just have to go in expecting to play V and not necessarily like you would in Skyrim playing your own character with your own backstory. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which isn't a huge issue. It's just being aware of that when you buy the game and not expecting.
It's more like playing
Bethesda
Witcher
RPG.
than it is Skyrim, because in Witcher you're very much playing Geralt, and you can choose to be a nice Geralt or an asshole Geralt, but you're still playing Geralt at the
It's
end
like Geralt,
and
Commander Shepard, Deus Ex, Adam Jensen. It's the same style of like you're playing a character, but the character can have different personalities depending on what you do.
there's a little leeway there for sure.
Yeah. All right. So we're already running pretty late. There's one other thing I do want to definitely talk about a bit, because I've heard complaints for some people about Keanu Reeves' acting. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think to me it hit me very much that like Reeves is doing a really good job.
I think
he's definitely
did a good
he gets
job as
better.
Johnny Silverhand. Like, I think
it's
or
inconsistent.
I don't know.
I think most of the time he's pretty on point, but there are times where I feel like there's a certain amount of like bite in his voice that just isn't there. Like it's 80% there, but not quite where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I think overall he was a good choice because the lines he delivers well. He delivers very well.
Perfectly.
But I just think
Like,
there are times where it just doesn't have the same kind of like venom that I think they wanted the character to, if that makes sense.
yeah.
It sometimes sounds like it sounds like he's reading off like a paper with lines written on him sometimes, and then sometimes you get lines.
I haven't
that are
encountered
really,
really that yet.
super
I think.
super good, but sometimes you can tell that he's
I
really
think people are
machine.
probably confusing him keeping a very reserved tone with him reading off a page, because there are moments where you're interacting with Reeves' character here where you're having like a heated conversation that's not heated. Like you're having a discussion about something that is really tough to talk about, and the way that he's talking about it is kind of in this reserved, like resigned to fate kind of way of like, this is what's going to happen. I'm telling you how it's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like it's very much like a parent talking to a bratty child is almost how I would put it. And I think he nails that. Like,
I mean, yeah.
Those, yes, there are just some lines where you can tell he's really like, he just has like hatred for a specific thing, and it just sometimes feels like it's just not like.
Yeah, when he
there.
needs to get a little more emotional, I think that's where it kind of falters. Of Reeves is just not that kind of voice actor that gets that like doesn't like shout that way or have that.
But I don't
delivery.
agree that he was completely miscast. I just think there's a couple of lines where it's like, if they had one more take out of that, you know.
I agree with that from what I've seen.
But I think it's certainly not a situation of like some people I've seen are saying that it was grossly miscast. I don't think that's right. I think Keanu is doing a fantastic job of what he's doing, and it's also he has a lot of lines in this game, like
He's got a lot to do. Yeah.
So
for sure,
I'm not surprised, especially with this being his first like huge video game role. Some of them aren't as well delivered, but again, like it's not something I've noticed at all.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not
it sticks
affected
out
my
occasionally,
enjoyment.
but it's nowhere near consistent an issue enough to really bother me, I guess.
And it's certainly not that he's doing a bad job. Like I think some people are saying he's doing an awful job of voice acting. And
I think it's just mildly inconsistent at times in terms of quality. But again, not to where I would really call it a real issue.
And it also stands out a little much. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna say, I think Johnny, I think it's a really good casting choice. It's just that Keanu was a little bit inconsistent, because I think his voice and like his mannerisms and his whole being fit Johnny Silverhand pretty well.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he's kind of just being like much more of an asshole in the game, but than Keanu is. But
and let's not mince. He's an asshole. Like
he's kind of insufferable sometimes.
Yeah. It's pretty like, in a good way, not like, oh my god, get him off the screen, but like, I hate to love him. It's almost like the same feeling you get when you're fighting like Handsome Jack in Borderlands. It's like, I hate this guy, he's horrible, but you love to hate him.
But they also, the thing I gotta praise him for is they leave room for, if your character, if you want to play a certain way, you can kind of be like, yeah, he's right. Then like I could totally see you being able to make a character like that.
Yeah, you can also be definitely. Like, listen, Johnny, you're being ridiculous. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of options in how you deal with him. So I think that's a good point.
Call him an asshole, like right to his face if you want to, which is great. If that's really how you feel, like they give you a lot of options in how your version of V perceives him, which is great.
That's a lot of fun.
Which is good, because I think their relationship, V's and Johnny's, is like one of the coolest in the game.
Which we won't spoil because it is really cool, and thankfully they didn't spoil it in the marketing, like I was worried about. I thought they might have shown a little too much with the marketing.
Some things that they spoiled in marketing, which
we're not going to mention. We are not going to mention, because if we even get close to mentioning them,
I'm not going to talk
we
about
spoil it.
I just wanted to complain about it for a second because
they showed some stuff in marketing.
Some things.
Although I will say, overall, if you watched a lot of the Cyberpunk marketing, for the most part, they only showed stuff from the start of the game. For the most part, which is pretty commendable. Like, I've hit the point in the game a long time ago where like I haven't seen anything in marketing that I haven't done already. So Yeah, I'm glad about that. That like a lot of the stuff they showed in marketing was pretty early on, so you have tons left to see.
And it's hard to not talk about this game in marketing, or even like we're doing right now, without spoiling things, because you have to talk about, especially marketing. You have to talk about how quests go and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
which we will down the
to
line
a certain extent.
And I just want to close out the Keanu voice acting discussion with that. I think part of the reason it stands out is that some of the side cast in this game are voice acted so ludicrously well.
Yep.
That like those single inconsistent lines stand out more because of how good everything else is. Like,
I can't think of a single
so many of the side
character,
characters are done incredibly
minor
well.
or major, that I've run into that I haven't thought did such a good job. They've all done.
Even like one-off characters have great voice acting. Like, there's so much attention paid to voice direction and making sure everything fits. But yeah,
definitely.
All right, we got to stop the Cyberpunk discussion for now because we are almost
we didn't even talk about combat, but okay.
We talked briefly about it. We were like, it's you don't go to the game.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. We said you don't go to the game for the combat, but the combat's good.
How do I not remember this conversation? All right. No.
I think you blacked out for a second.
My one tip or trick, if you're feeling like the combat is stiff, jump some more. I'm telling you. Just use the verticality.
Jump,
because
slide.
It's actually like really
tons of verticality everywhere.
Yeah, it's an untapped
really good
market.
really good level design for various, especially during the quest that I've been talking with you two about all day. I'm not going to say what it is, but there are some really good like arenas in that quest line. Some of them very open and some of them very cramped and claustrophobic. So
and they make you adjust to different situations really well.
Yeah.
All right. So we're definitely going to be talking about Cyberpunk more. We might talk more about it on the main podcast in less spoiler terms once we finish the game to kind of give our final thoughts in a non-spoiler way. But we are certainly going to be doing a spoiler Gamescast, though whether or not we do full spoilers will still be up for discussion because the fact that we know the game has at least like 5 or 6 different endings.
Jesus.
So we likely don't want to spoil all the different ones, so that way if you watch that, you can still play through a different way and see a different end without having us spoil everything. But yeah, so that'll be happening soon, which brings us to shoutouts. We always got to do it to close out the show. I just got to give a shout out to a character named Misty, who is the sweetest person.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, the marketing painted her in a different way to me. I'm glad she's not the character that I thought she would be from the marketing, because man, it's really refreshing to have a character like that in a Cyberpunk story. So yeah, I just thought that was a really well done character. All right, moving on. Who's ready?
I got one. I'm gonna come at you with a double whammy. Actually, one of them just got a shout out. Our boy Jeff Keighley in his blue shoes.
Oh, of course.
We didn't talk about
my
that.
Goodness, his shoes
Gotta shout
were
that
so
out.
blue.
And they were wonderful. But I also wanted to shout out. There's an incredible side quest. I'm not gonna give any spoilers, but it is one of the greatest Office references I have ever seen, and it made me laugh. And I thought it was great.
All right, who else? Who's ready?
I have one.
Brett, go.
There is a game on Steam. It's called Slasher's Keep. It's like
Oh my god, it's so good.
It's a cute little roguelike that has some cool spins on roguelike and is also just like kind of different gameplay wise because it's first person kind of some good on purpose jank on purpose.
What? On purpose, Jake?
It's because it's trying to
That's what we
replicate
like to
like
call
old
Euro
dungeon
jank.
crawler,
Oh, okay.
and it does it well where it's not like negatively frustrating. It's just frustrating if you're bad.
Yikes!
It's
Those are just a hot
it's very
take.
good. I would recommend it.
Yeah, I've had a ton of fun with Slasher's Keep too.
I don't know. See, now I'm afraid I'm going to be bad.
All right, Ben. What you got?
Shout out to the mantis blades because like they're coolest.
Hell
they're
yeah.
the coolest thing.
I haven't unlocked them
They're the
yet.
coolest thing.
So excited.
Well, yeah, they're really cool.
All right, that's it. We did it.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah, we're playing the
Ta-da.
outro.
Wow.
Thanks for listening, tuning in. Every Tuesday, 7 a.m. We're here.
I don't think that's true. Or are we?
Well, yeah, every Tuesday, 7 a.m. We are. The podcast
We've had a
is
very
released.
consistent schedule.
Well, because we
Well, that's when-
record.
That's when the recording goes live, but we're here right now.
Yeah, well,
10
All right.
p.m.